A night in with MauLer and the drinker, getting trashed with the web screen dinkers. A cheap night cause I'm feeling kinda thrifty, got a 10-pack of beers and a bottle of whiskey. Hop off the cork, have a glass of wine, touch they'll say I'll be fine. Trouble walking in a straight line, but pour me a Pinot Noir. It's open bar with our hosts, MauLer and the critical drinker.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome on this Burns night. Hence the reason you're probably wondering why I'm dressed in such a dapper fashion. Today is Burns Day in Scotland, where we celebrate the birth of the poet Robert Burns. Hence, I am dressed up in my kilt and my full attire, and I thought I would raise a glass to the bard himself. So look, I will prove it to you guys that I even have a kilt on. There you go. You can see it.
That's all the proof you need, okay, Chad?
There you go. Drinker confirmed to be wearing a skirt. There you go.
Man,
I never thought it would happen, but that is it. And I will read to you guys his Selkirk Grace, and it's really short. It's only like a couple of lines, but Americans and various other people, you say grace sometimes at the table when you're getting ready to sit down to a nice meal. And we have one in Scotland as well. It's slightly different, but I will read it to you. And this was by Burns himself. He says, "Some hae meat and canna eat, and some would eat and that want it. But we hae meat and we can eat, so let the Lord be thank it." So there you go.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
I'm sure a message we can all get behind, too.
What's that?
A message we can all get behind.
Yeah. It's always good to have food on your table, I suppose. But anyway... we should probably get started with the stream, I suppose. Enough of that poetry stuff. Let's bring in the rest of our guests, shall we? Indeed. Well, this gentleman, he's one of my mods, and he's done fantastic work over the past couple of years. Often thankless work, because, being a mod is a difficult job. You know this yourself, MauLer. You've got a bunch of them, I'm sure. And it's great to finally get a chance to recognize him and bring him on the stream and have a chat with him, because I've been on his channel once or twice. And I thought I'd return the favor. So it is Mr. Brown from the Mr. Brown Alliance. Welcome, sir. Welcome aboard.
Hello there.
Hello.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, chats. Good evening, MauLer. William, thank you for having me, my friend.
No problem, man. Good to have you on.
I sincerely hope you had haggis, neeps, and tatties for dinner.
I did, actually. I did have it. The turnip was fucking disgusting. It's like the Brussels sprouts in your Christmas dinner.
Haggis is fantastic.
It's pretty good, yeah. Just don't think about what's in it, and you're fine.
Yep.
Yeah. And it even had I had like a nice whiskey sauce that you pour over it, so pretty good. I must say, pretty nice.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoy your time at the bar, man.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
I'll try. I can't send alcohol to you, but hopefully you have some on hand, so that'll make it more fun for you. But next up, we have got the despotic ruler of Antrim himself. It's the Despot. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Always good, man. Always good to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
And I very much enjoyed your women talking video.
You actually enjoyed that?
I mean, I enjoyed the video. I didn't enjoy the movie because I haven't seen it. I feel like I don't need to at this point.
Yeah, I don't think you do. A lot of people in the comments were writing things like, man, I'm having trouble watching this video. This movie is so disgusting that I can't get through it. Just for the little clips of the movie that I showed, that was the most difficult movie I've had to, because I watched garbage for my channel, right? That was maybe the most difficult movie. Very difficult to watch. Awful. Just awful.
Was it a multiple sittings job, or did you do it all in one go?
No, you can't do that all in one go. I watched it twice in many sittings, but it's a particularly disgusting movie. If anyone wants a good hate watch, check out Women Talking.
Is it one of those films that nobody watched, but it got nominated for all the awards?
Yeah, I theorized that was due to the Abilene paradox, whereby a bunch of people all pretend to think the same thing, even though none of them does. So, for example, you get 4 critics, they go to see a movie. And they all pretend to think, oh, that was a great movie. You know, this women talking, that's fantastic, because they don't want the other three to think they're sexist or something like that. And that's how this absolutely terrible movie ends up getting 220 awards. And I showed that in my video. It's not just a disgusting movie in terms of its politics. It's just a bad movie, like plain and simple. It's terrible.
Does that explain the phenomenon for about 3 years where everyone thought Gal Gadot could act?
I mean, she's hot, so she's at least pleasant to look at.
Yeah, there's at least something there, I suppose. Wonder Woman entranced a lot of people, and then I think it's like if you remove the fact that she's exceedingly beautiful, and then just look at her actual performance. Ooh.
Hard to do though, like when she's on screen, it's hard to not think about, wow, that's a beautiful woman.
I know, and I said this.
Just focus on the acting.
I know, and I said this on an open bar a couple of weeks ago. It's like, it's not even like, you know, oh God, she's just so sexy or whatever. It's more just like, she's so beautiful. I just feel happy seeing her. It's just like, I don't know how to describe
How can she
it.
be a bad actress when I feel happy
it's almost
seeing
like
her?
the world just feels slightly better, you know, just from seeing her. Yeah, it's a weird one, but I don't know, man. Like, you see her in other roles. Like, I watched her in, I think, Death on the Nile, where she had to play this, like, you know, like not like a femme fatale, but like a rich, seductive heir to a fortune. And she just did not have that in her at all. But, you know,
I mean,
she was nice to look at.
one of her clips from that film went viral of her being an awful actress, as that happens
Yes.
with a lot of her films. The one I remember was when the Snyder Cut came out, and they were like, they fixed a goofy line from, you know, Kal-El No. And it's like, no, they didn't. It's another terrible take. It's just a different take. Kal-El No.
Oh dear. Well, you know, she's realistically, Hollywood's an unforgiving place, especially as actresses get older, and she's probably got a couple more years in her, I think, of doing these mainstream movies, and then she'll start to fade out, sadly. But them's the breaks. I'm sure she's
What a
made
gal.
more than enough money that she can just like retire and not care about any of this anymore. Oh yeah, we should probably bring our last guest as well.
Yeah, we can do that.
He is so regular on this open bar that he's practically a co-host, and on one occasion he actually was. So welcome everyone. Little Platoon, it is great to have you back as always, my friend.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm immune to the seductive powers of Gal Gadot, so I just have to suffer the bad acting every time I see it. The complete range, MauLer is right, is encompassed in that those two takes of Kal-El No. But the Spanish one is the best one because it's the only one that has some kind of emotion. So her two takes are Kal-El No, and then the other take is Kal-El No, and then the Spanish person got really into it, and so it's Kal-El No, and that's
No. I was going to say, like, so you're obviously unclouded by her beauty, so you could just see her performances from what they are, and like, are you just appalled by like what you see on screen?
Kind of, yes, yeah, very, very much appalled. Appalling is the word.
See, apparently I'm the weirdo though, because I think she's hot as fuck and a terrible actress.
How's that weird?
Combination. Because you just said like I'm spellbound by her beauty.
Well, I know,
like,
but like,
no.
but it's like, you know, when you detach your dick from your thinking process, and then you actually just like rationalize it, you're like, oh yeah, she is pretty shit.
Wait, why are you like, oh, Platoon? What does it feel like? It's like, well, then you feel the same thing. She's shit.
I know, but it's difficult to separate those two things a lot of the time. Whereas he's unclouded by this stuff.
Fair.
Yeah. Well, you saw the truth. But anyway, we have our panel. We have our bar assembled. The drinks are poured. So I suggest we plow on with tonight's entertainment. And this one is actually wasn't originally part of my lineup, but it just came in on the news feed quite this evening. And it's kind of an interesting one. It was Daisy Ridley getting interviewed about her role in the new Star Wars movie that she's going to be doing. You know, we're all super excited for that.
Oh, yes.
But she was asked about like the attitude of fans towards her, the sexism that's rife within the Star Wars community. Rife, I tells you. And she had this to say. So Daisy Ridley was asked about some of the online uproar from fans after filmmaker Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy was announced as the director of Star Wars New Jedi Order. They're really going with that title, aren't they? That's it. That's actually what they're going to call it. Actor Daisy Ridley addressed the issue of sexism from Star Wars fans, telling NBC's Today Show that she thinks it's been blown out of proportion. She said, "I think my take is that things get blown out of proportion, and the interactions I've had with people have been nothing but wonderful and supportive. I've only ever been embraced, and I think we're going to make a great film." Now, that last sentence I would probably dispute, but like the other things that she said, I very much salute her on that one, because it would have been very easy to walk that line of, yes, anyone who disagrees with me and objects to this movie is a sexist and a bigot, and they need to be eliminated. She just said, no, it's fine. Star Wars fans have been pretty good towards me, and I think either she's very smart and she knows not to piss off certain people, or this is how she feels. Either way, I think it's the right thing to say.
It's a smart thing to say, especially because if you could contrast it with the approach taken by everybody involved with Star Wars when the Obi-Wan Kenobi show came out. And so you had the actor playing Reva, who was doing, I had all of these hundreds of thousands of racist Instagram messages that I just kind of forgot to show you, but they definitely exist. Simon Pegg does his hostage videos in the car saying how terrible it is that she's getting all the abuse. Like, that's the usual approach, is to big it up massively. The official Twitter account for Star Wars picks on an account with about 3 followers and says, you don't belong in the fandom anymore. So that was the kind of the scorched earth campaign. So I hope it's what Daisy Ridley genuinely believes, but even if she's been told to take this line, it's still a marked improvement, because it means they may have learned something from the backlash.
I mean, it reminds me a little bit of Henry Cavill when he was asked about, like, again, the same thing, like fans being like bigoted and sexist and so on. And he said, no, that's just passion from the fan base. They care deeply about this stuff. And who am I to dispute that? Like, they care about the characters that we're playing, and it's up to us to do a good job of bringing them to life. Again, a great response, really diplomatic and really fair. And hopefully she's just of the same school of thought that he is. I mean, I definitely, I don't subscribe to the belief that she's a great actress. Like, when I look at her performance as Rey, it's like pretty limited.
Average,
yeah,
at best.
Not a leading lady that you think she's got like overwhelming charisma and screen presence, but I don't blame her for that,
though, because like then you look at how the character was written, and you kind of think, well, she was never really given the opportunity to do any actual acting with that person, because that person isn't really a character. I've not seen her in enough other things to know whether she actually has talent that we just didn't get to see in Star Wars. But yeah, it's partly, I think, a response to the character being so shallow that she comes across as very, very limited character, limited portrayal.
I do think, though, that it's a major achievement that she's generally quite well liked as a person. Like, no one dislikes her, despite the fact that the vast majority of Star Wars fans either hate the character or feel nothing toward the character, Rey. That's quite an achievement in and of itself, to play such a dull, boring, not necessarily unlikable, but just emotionless character, and to come out of it fairly well in the eyes of the fandom. That's a pretty good achievement in and of itself.
Whenever the set of ladies gets listed of like the worst ones we've had as of late because of horrible writing, it is often mentioned about Rey. It's like, remember, Rey was shit, but she didn't like piss anybody off really. She was just sort of there. It's part of the problem, actually.
Well, I was going to say, it's a little bit like the actress that played Rose Tico, Kelly Marie Tran. Like, I think the character was horrible, and everyone hated that character, but I don't think anyone had a problem with her necessarily.
Yeah, well, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Brown.
I was just going to say, I think the fandom just realised they were the kind of puppets behind the, real taskmasters. Nobody's got any bad feeling. They were just doing their job. And it's just a shame it turned out how it did with as you said, the storytelling. There was the narrative behind it, which it's not Star Wars.
And they have to live with the problem, don't they? Imagine being Kelly Marie Tran, and every time you go into a toy store to buy something for your kids, you see all those unsold toys of yourself.
In the bargain bin.
I don't even think they're going to be left on the shelves at this point. They've been taken to the old landfill now.
Where was it? They put all those Atari cartridges from ET back in the day. In the New Mexico desert.
Do you know what I was thinking the other day? Do you know how they're doing all these brand biopics? Seeing as you mentioned Atari Drinker, there's a great, because I've read the books. I've read a couple of books about the rise and fall of Atari. It's really great. There's a great movie in there somewhere.
Yep.
Somebody
for
make
sure,
that.
yeah.
Hollywood, if you're listening. The Rise and Fall of Atari. It's going to be
The
great.
guys who made the Tetris film, they can do it.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking.
It's a fascinating story
Does,
because it's just like greed and you know, lack of attention to detail just bringing about your downfall.
Does anybody think that Daisy Ridley regrets being cast in those films? Because she's not had any proper work since.
I mean,
Well,
she
she never
recently
really-
had 12 million reasons to be glad she was cast in
Yeah.
them. And she was working
There
in
is
a
that.
pub. She was
'Cause-
working in a pub when they cast her. So, like, fair play to her. Because if
Yeah,
she
like-
wasn't cast in that, like, your youth goes by pretty quick. You know, you wake up one day and for some reason you're 35.
Early 20s, yeah.
She she would have just been another person working in London trying to make a living and then waking up one day and thinking, shit, you know, kind of blew it. But no, she got away with it. She went and got herself a good role and made herself a millionaire. Like, fair play to her. She won the lottery. That's amazing.
I think like if you were to take someone like Brie Larson, like, does she regret taking on Captain Marvel? She probably does, because she had a pretty well established career before then, starting to appear in some
Oscar
big
winner.
movies. Yeah, and also some like pretty artistically valid films as well, like Room. So she was doing well, and like that she didn't need that necessarily, and arguably that's done a lot of damage to her career. Like,
Yeah, it's
she's
like she
not
had
basically been
credit and she spent it on getting into Marvel, which in retrospect is a fucking pointless move.
Yeah, whereas Daisy Ridley, yeah, like you say, if she's essentially an unknown actor working in London and having to do like part-time jobs in between, like, she had nothing before this. She's probably made a shit ton of money out of it, and definitely made a ton of money to come back as for this other Ray movie. Whether or not it makes
If it happens.
whether or not it makes any money at the box office, it's almost irrelevant at this point. She can retire and never work a day again for the rest of her life, and that's probably that's a huge win compared to what she had before. So I don't think she regrets it. I wouldn't.
Yeah, apparently she's not seen, because the full clip of the interview is not that interesting. There's another film she's in recently, which is, I think, the main subject of the interview with NBC. Is it called something like I Think About Death or something like that? Anyway, that's the one she was principally doing. But then they got on to the topic of Star Wars, which, yes, does make people think about death quite a lot. And she said, yeah, she hasn't seen the script for this new film. But what's her name? Charmin Obaid-Chinoy has apparently just told her the whole story, and that's the thing that made her so excited and interested, and she really wants to come back because she thinks the story is great. I would love for that to be true. It would be really nice. I just really, really doubt it.
Well, the question to ask as an interviewer is, hey, Daisy, did you feel the same way when you read or were explained the story of TLJ? And she'd probably be like, well, yeah. And then you'd be like, right.
Okay. Yeah, the movie that she's in now is called Sometimes I Think About Dying.
That's the
That's
one.
a great title. Very, very catchy.
It's very very apt for her career at this point. But yeah, I mean, it's you know, she hasn't essentially done anything since Star Wars. I mean, that's kind of to be expected. Like, if she wasn't a big star before, this hasn't done much to elevate her brand or her profile, and she hasn't exactly covered herself.
When are we going to see this movie?
What, the Ray movie?
Because let's not forget, 3 years' time, it's the 50th.
I mean,
Good God, imagine releasing that on the 50th.
What
Yeah, but you said that, and
what
then
an
you said-
honor for
Would they
George
have the
Lucas.
balls to do it?
What did they do for
So-
Doctor Who's 60th? I mean, it's kind of the done thing now.
There
You
you
have to
go.
ruining
they-
anniversaries. Is there we go.
They released Rings of Power on the anniversary of Tolkien's death. Which is
Well,
just-
Disney's own centennial was marked with utter failures on like their major pillars for all
Yeah,
of their like,
Wish.
cinematic franchises.
When
basically.
was Star Wars officially released then? Was it 77?
I think
Yes.
it was 77.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. So I don't think it's going to be that long.
I was-
So it's going to film this summer. You'd probably think it would be 2025 then that it would release. If it happens, if it gets made, I'm still not convinced it's real.
Well, then hopefully we get Mando and Grogu
Oh,
for
God.
the 50th, eh? Oh boy.
Why do you hate us so?
Is there any way it could be saved for the 50th if Disney?
No.
It's gone, isn't it? It's just totally gone, hasn't it?
They need to
No
make a
matter-
few more mistakes before they'll fix it. Like, because they probably still think there's a chance they can put out complete garbage and make money.
I would
But,
definitely
like-
think they would be willing to use the 50th as a commercial opportunity. Like from Disney's perspective, it has culture means nothing to them. But if they can big it up as, this is the 50th anniversary of the debut of Star Wars, and we're gonna celebrate it with a great movie, they'll take advantage of that commercially, so that they'll have that in their mind, that date.
They could honestly make more money just by re-releasing the first 6
100%
movies.
agree. If they just do
the
a
original version.
remaster or an IMAX, do like an IMAX remaster of just episode 4, like A New Hope, release that, very little costs, and it's
No
all
hope.
profit. They
But
would
Star
make
Wars-
way more money.
The extra special editions where they go back and they take the weird caterpillar snake creature from Solo and they put it into Return of the Jedi somehow. I could see them doing that.
I'd be up for that.
Like every so often, there'll just be like Ahsoka or something in the background,
Yeah.
just lurking.
Well, she has to, because somehow she's alive through all of that stuff and just didn't, intervene at all at any point ever.
Don't think about it, Platoon. It'll just make
They'll
it
Second
dub it.
sad.
season on the way.
They'll dub it so when Princess Leia first meets Obi-Wan, she's like, Obi-Wan, I haven't seen you since I was a 5-year-old girl and you rescued me and brought me back to my parents.
You'll be pleased to know I can run even faster than I could back then.
I had hope for the Obi-Wan series, and I think they had a very, very nice opportunity to do something good, and they just totally messed that up.
Do you
A
think
lot of
that's the
people
worst
felt
thing
betrayed by
they've
that one.
done? Is Obi-Wan the worst thing Disney
I think
done?
so,
it's-
yeah, because
It
they're
is
rewriting everything.
atrocious.
I think in
It's
terms of just the objective writing quality is probably better than Boba Fett, but it's worse in the sense that it's a bigger betrayal of the character because no one really cared
Well,
that
wait.
much about Boba Fett before this.
Are we
but,
including
like,
the sequels?
Everything
No,
that's been
it's-
done, George
Oh,
Lucas
okay.
and Disney.
They
I
could-
would say
Worst
I haven't
individual thing
seen-
they did for me is Luke. That's going to be number one forever.
They could
Yeah.
have done something
Yeah.
quite nice with Ewan McGregor for the 50th. But there you go.
Well, yeah, they had all the ingredients in place. That's what makes it probably, if you discount
Okay.
the feature films, it's what makes it the most disappointing probably of the Disney Plus stuff, is that the disappointment scales with the amount of potential that you're sacrificing. And
Yeah.
they had an immense amount of potential with that show. They had all the ingredients, all the cast. It's set in a really interesting part of galactic history. You can do really fascinating things with all of those things. And they didn't. They did the Kenobi show, which is shit. It's not the most damaging, and it's not the worst on a quality level either, because I think with Drinker, Boba Fett's worse. Bits of Mando season 3 in particular are definitely worse. But that's where the bar is set now, isn't it? Is it better or worse than Boba Fett? Well, does it
I
matter
think
at that
it's
point?
it's the immense frustration as well of squandered opportunities. Like with TFA, like you had all the original actors who were still alive and they were still able to perform. They were all up for it and they were all up for being in this movie. And you didn't put them together and you wasted everyone.
Crazy.
And with Obi-Wan and with the Obi-Wan TV show, again, you've got Ewan McGregor, you've got Hayden Christensen. They are a little bit older now, but they are still young enough to do all this stuff, and they are clearly both up for being in a Star Wars project. They're ready to go. And again, you fucking squander them. It's like, how many times can we give you an open goal and have you miss before we just take you off the pitch, man? It's just depressing.
Will, you should write a book about it. I think it's probably one of the biggest if not the biggest squandered opportunity in cinema.
The
just
Strange
gonna-
Death of Star Wars would be a good book, actually. Yeah.
No,
I
I'm
was
just going to say
thinking the
Yeah,
title
you
would
should.
be
production hell, all of fucking Disney Star Wars.
Yeah, if he wrote a book on it, it would just be one page, just a link to his channel.
You could just call
That
the book
is,
"Fuck Up: The History of Disney Star Wars."
You need to do
Yep.
the book, Will. You need to do the book.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Or just the
You need
history
to
of
do it,
Disney.
mate. You
Never
need
mind,
to
never
do it,
mind the
mate.
Star Wars thing. I think I was on Echo Chamberlain stream a week or so ago, and he posed the interesting question: what would it take if you were doing the script for this Rey movie? What would it take to make a film? It doesn't even necessarily have to be the best thing in the world, but what would you need to do to make it even palatable? And my theory, my answer was use the world between worlds, go back in time, and she kills herself, which is not a serious proposal, but it might actually happen. Then Luke can take over. But if you were genuinely seriously doing it, is there a way to make a Rey film if you're Charmin Obaid-Chinoy, which is not just completely dead on arrival?
Yes, I'll tell you how you do it. You pretend that the sequel trilogy was the almost propagandized version of what actually happened, and then you get Rey, who's this old drunk, fat, out of shape, former Jedi who hates her life, being like, sitting there with like a gin and tonic, being like, all right, I'm going to tell you what actually happened. It was fucking horrible. And I just about died so many times because I was an idiot. And then you actually get like her real version of events and it like retcons it. That's how I would fix it.
Will it be a green
fun way to do it.
Russian? The drink she has, a green Russian with a green vodka and green titty milk.
Why not? Why not indeed? I would go with that.
Moving on.
Just make it a remake of Rocky 3. So at the start of the movie, she gets her hand chopped off by her enemy in a fight, and then some ally has to come along and pull her out of her nihilistic, morose mess and get her back on her feet and get her training and bring her to the
fucking
beach and
Finn
restore
has
the
to be
beach.
there. Like, come on, you need the eye of the tiger.
Yeah, and make the villain look like Mr. T.
Just get Mr. T for it.
Somebody in the chat when Lizzo turned up, we knew it was fucked.
Oh, I knew it was fucked long before that.
Yeah.
I was going to say everyone knew it was fucked
That was
before
the
that.
stamp. That was the
Man of
stamp.
Season
If
3
you
is the
needed a
worst thing I've
screenshot
seen
that-
from them.
If you needed a screenshot that just really encapsulated everything that Disney Star Wars is, it was that. Lizzo and Jack Black, they're on screen like a couple of clowns.
Dead folks.
That was it.
Knighting
resting.
Grogu. She knights Grogu for what, services to merch sales or something. It's just, oh yeah, that episode. I still have dreams about that sometimes.
Because, MauLer, you guys on EFAP, you've laughed at Patrick Williams saying that Star Wars is a movie about space wizards for children. Well, somehow he's finally been proven correct. That's what it's become. It's a
Yeah, it
movie
wasn't
about
a,
space morons for retards.
He wasn't making a statement about, the OT. He was making a statement about what to expect going forward. That's what it turns out.
Yeah, he was prescient. That mad genius that he is. But that's what Star Wars is now. It's a joke.
And they shit on John Boyega as well.
Fuck
Finn's
John
the-
Boyega.
Big time.
I'm serious, man. Like when John Boyega, he was really early in on fanbait marketing because when that first movie trailer came out, he went onto Twitter and started ranting weird shit like the fan base better get used to it, obviously indicating that the fan base didn't like that there was a black man in Star Wars. Fuck him. I don't like the guy.
I embraced it. I thought it was going to be great.
Nobody gave a shit if it was a black person in Star Wars.
Everybody
give a shit.
embraced it. The
Did
reaction to
everyone
that
just
movie
like
was
suddenly forget about
incredibly
Lando
positive.
Calrissian?
Which
Yeah,
one
and
was that? Nobody
this
remembers that
dickhead
character.
shows up with a big fat chip on his shoulder and starts throwing the word racism around. It's really, you can't be doing that. That's serious stuff,
I do sometimes
don't
wonder
like
about
that.
these actors if they're so naive that like people throw this shit at them and highlight it and see like, look, this is happening. Definitely. And then they check the account and it's like fucking created yesterday and it has 1 like on 1 tweet from itself. And they're like, see? It's getting some traction, John. Like, do you want to say something about this?
Poor John.
Yeah.
I can believe that. It's
Maybe.
kind of telling that he's not probably coming back, though, is he? Because and neither is. In fact, Ray is the only one coming back because Oscar Isaac said he'd only go back if he needed an extra house.
Oh,
And
yes.
John Boyega was very upset at being airbrushed out of Chinese posters. So, yeah, where's the racism there, John?
Yeah. But yeah, they got Daisy Ridley back, and I guess that's the only one they really cared about anyway. So, yeah, it makes me think like, is this just an exercise in legacy building? Is it just we've got Rey who had her trilogy, and now we need to give her like the beginning at least of another trilogy, so she spans 2 trilogies in Star Wars, just like
That
Luke
sort
did.
of has to be it, though, doesn't it? Because the Rise of Skywalker was disgracefully billed as the close of a saga, which actually closed with Return of the Jedi, and everything that comes after that is fake. But nevertheless, that was the end of an official complete saga. It's done. The Skywalker thing is over. So they have to. Whatever is coming next in the cinema is the beginning of Star Wars' next big epic cinematic adventure. And it's going to be
Not-
Rey.
Not even Ruin Johnson got his trilogy.
There's still time. The heat death of the universe is a really long way away.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, one day it will happen. But well, that was our little detour into like a completely unexpected thing that just happened to come up tonight. But the real thing I wanted to talk about was the Oscar nominations, because
Woo.
Barbie has been nominated in multiple categories, but tragically, it hasn't been nominated in every category, and people are mad about that. Because Barbie should have been nominated for every Oscar, even the ones which were completely inapplicable to it, like, best documentary and stuff. And unless that happens, everyone's mad, apparently. But
8 nominations.
yes,
That's a lot. It's a lot of
That's-
nominations.
Well,
that's
it's not bad.
arguably 8 more than it deserves, I would say. But
Mm,
No, 9 more than it deserves.
I could definitely, I could definitely get behind like best visual design or something. Like
Best costume design.
Yeah, there was
Sure.
definitely something there from a purely aesthetic point of view, like in that movie, that was pretty impressive, if nothing else. But everyone's mad that Greta Gerwig didn't get Best Director and Margot Robbie didn't get nominated for Best Actress. But Ryan Gosling did, because everyone loves Ken.
and he was hamming it up and enjoying himself.
He
Well-
was. And I think it's such a great example of
Hammy.
a character that like the movie clearly doesn't want you to root for, but you absolutely do. Now he's got an Oscar nomination.
We're in a weird place where like they're all there's those people who are really annoyed by the announcement, but I was just sitting there being like, well, yeah, when the movie came out, that's like the only thing that everyone agreed on was that Ryan Gosling's Cad was actually like fun, awesome, interesting, and charming. It was his charisma that like the
Agreed.
movie mined to its best like possibility, and the idea that he gets an Oscar for is like, well, I don't know that I would give it to him over every other person in the category, but at the same time, it's like, this makes sense. What do you mean?
I'd be very tempted to give it to Ryan Gosling. I mean, just look at the scene where he discovers the patriarchy. He's just reacting to stuff, right? And he does an amazing job, because this is the first time he's ever seen anything like this, and he goes in there and he's just blown away by it all. Compare that to, for example, and it's a weird comparison, but you'll understand it. Compare that to Halle Bailey in live action remake number 18, where that's the Little Mermaid remake. She goes to this little market, and it's the first time she's seen anything like this in the human world, and she's just kind of vaguely confused. She barely reacts to it. And it's the difference, obviously, between a very inexperienced actress and Ryan Gosling. But I think he did an amazing job in that scene.
Gosling. No, go on, mate, sorry.
No, I'm done. I think
Gosling is up against Mark Ruffalo,
In Poor
Robert
Things,
Downey Jr.,
in Oppenheimer.
Robert De Niro, Sterling K. Brown. No relation.
I mean, that is
It's gonna be hard to beat literally any of them, because
I know. Like, this is the thing. Like, as much as we liked Ken as a character, I suppose, and like his charisma as an actor sold it, it's not like it was a really serious, nuanced performance.
No.
He was very.
If there was an Oscar
it's the
award
reason it's
for...
highlight worthy to me is that like he carried the film for the people who thought it was shit. So
Yeah,
I get it. I get why he got the nomination.
he's incredibly memeable, but memeable isn't, as far as I'm aware, one of the categories for the Oscars. So I wouldn't have put him on any list. I wouldn't have put Barbie on for any of the awards, with the arguable exception of production design. But the laughable thing is that its supposed snub, even though it's got nominated for 8 awards, and both Gerwig and Margot Robbie have been nominated for separate individual awards, the complaints about sexism because Ken is the one who's nominated individually for his character work is, I think, a little bit silly, because the only reason Barbie has got 8 nominations is because it's a female-led film that made $1 billion. It had to be on the list. They couldn't not have it on the list. But because it has no actual artistic merits in there at all, the committee basically just said, where can we put people? Fuck it. Ken can go for supporting actor. Gerwig can go for something. We'll just give them whatever we can find space for. So I don't think it's a particularly calculated snub. It's more the case that it's been elevated way above its station to be in the Oscars contention to begin with. And now people are complaining that it's not being given the best and the biggest awards, even though you compare it category by category. Who would you put Margot Robbie over in the best actor category, actress category? Sorry, I don't think there's anyone.
The thing that people should start forcing. I've seen a couple like takes about this, and it's just so true. It's like, don't tell me she deserves it. Tell me who doesn't.
Yeah.
Because the only way she's getting in is if someone else is getting pushed out. So tell me, who's the woman who doesn't deserve the recognition,
But it
Ryan.
also applies to Ken because what's his name? Ryan Gosling is in there in place of a number of people I think who did a better job in better films. The
Yeah,
fact
that's fair.
Godzilla -1 only gets one nomination, and for visual
Special
effects, which is
effects,
the least
yeah.
remarkable part about that film, I would have given Best Supporting Actor over Ryan Gosling, sorry, to any one of the supporting cast from that film.
Agreed.
I
think
don't know if the
I might have given
Academy.
Best Actor like at least a nomination for the main character.
I don't
in
know how
Godzilla.
much the Academy could have awarded that, because foreign countries only get to select one movie to submit to the Oscars, and Japan had their pick by the time the whole Godzilla -1 phenomenon happened, so they didn't pick that movie. So that's the reason it's not for Best Picture. I don't know if that applies to other categories though.
Also, I don't know if I would say it's his least remarkable aspect is the visual effects. Out of all the film, like things that consider with filmmaking for -1, like I don't know, the I saw most people discussing the incredible effects considering its origins, so to speak.
Was it about
Oh.
27 people who did all the special effects?
Yeah.
35. Yeah.
But that's the qualifier for that category, because what makes the special effects remarkable in Godzilla -1 isn't that they look incredible, it's how good they look considering how little money was spent on them. So I guess it depends on what the criteria for awarding that is. My point about it being the least remarkable aspect, I probably should have said is the least important aspect of that film.
I'm not sure I agree with that either, because it is Godzilla.
No?
It's complicated. I don't know.
This is where you get into the realms of like, do we judge it in absolute terms or do we judge it in relation to the resources they had at their disposal?
Yeah,
and that's a tricky one, because it's like, well, what is your judging criteria? Because it's almost like you need a category for like movie that did the most with the least or something like
it's a $13.13 million masterpiece.
It's just, I mean, I haven't seen it, but
And that's a bold statement.
to make any movie that is theater releasable for
fantastic.
$13 million, like that's a major achievement.
This is the thing. I don't want to oversell it and say like, it's one of the all-time classics of cinema, but it's more just like they produced a really tight, really well-structured story with great characters, good acting, good dialogue, fantastic effects for the budget that they had, and they did it all with very little resources, and so it's extremely admirable. Everyone who watched it had a great time.
I had a connection with it. It was really good. Just I thought I would have the problem with the subtitles, because normally I would avoid stuff like that, but I opened my mind, as it were, and it was fantastic. Once you get over the subtitle thing, you can get into it. Yeah, it was really good. And
well, didn't you watch Barbie earlier today? How would you compare? How would you compare -1 with Barbie?
I want to hear your take on Barbie, Mr. Brown, because you saw it for the first time today, right? And we've all seen it, months ago. I've seen it twice.
This poor guy thought that he had to watch it.
I want to hear the fresh, reasonably unbiased take.
I kind of get the feeling there's a lot of we're women and we've got it tough and we are going to hate you, but really we're all in this together, and we can't be tribal about nature, as it were, because we're all in this together. We can't just. It is tribalism, but when it's down to the genders of being, we're being tribal and slagging each other off, I think we're in a bad place. I don't know if this the Los Angeles or Hollywood perspective of what a woman should be, what a man should be, I would imagine it's pretty skewed. It's pretty fucked up.
Well, that's the reason, isn't it, that America Ferrera is even on the Oscar nominations. It's solely on the strength of the speech, which really encapsulates, I think, what you're saying there. But she's not a supporting actress in that film. She doesn't really do any acting, and she doesn't support anybody. So she's, by definition, not a supporting actress. Godzilla is a better supporting actress than America Ferrera is.
Yeah, divide and conquer.
If you were to take the sexual politics out of the movie and look at it,
then there's no movie.
Well, yeah, this is what I was getting at. Like, if you were to look at it in terms of structural terms and the actual plot consistency, the way the characters behave, like whether it leads you to a logical, satisfying ending, like how do you perceive the movie in that case?
I think it's quite a badly made movie from that perspective. And I've thought about this. I did a review of it. I mean, I did like a double review where one was sort of politics free and general, and then I went into the politics. But in the politics free version, basically, I think the second act is terrible, where they go into the real world. That's mostly very boring. The Mattel board is really bad and not, it doesn't really do anything. It's just, that's maybe the worst aspect of it. She tries to use the old lady. Greta Gerwig tries to use the old lady, the woman who invented Barbie, as a kind of surrogate mother, which births Barbie into the real world, and it doesn't work.
Barmaid from Cheers.
She tries to do a setup and payoff, and the payoff is at the end where she shows up. But I think that very emotional scene where Barbie sort of has a self-realization, she becomes a human, that really should have been with Ken. The build-up was all there, and that would have been quite a good ending if she realized what she had done to Ken and how horrible the matriarchy was. That would have made it quite a good film, I think. Still would have had problems, but just from a technical standpoint, it's a very unbalanced movie. There's some very bad pacing there. There's some terrible characters, like specifically the Mattel board, and the ending is awful. That scene where Barbie and the old lady are talking is extremely boring and very hammy. At the end, she just throws in the sentimental music and the Polaroid photos, and she's just throwing everything at the screen to try to get the viewer to emote. And it's very hammy directing. So I would say from a technical perspective, there are things wrong with it, like seriously wrong with it. It's not a good film.
I mean, I'd be inclined to agree. Like, if you up until that point where they transition into the real world, there's fun to be had with it for sure. Like, it's goofy, and like the way their society functions is just ridiculous, which is what you'd expect. But like visually, it looks very interesting, and there's some gags regarding like how these dolls are being played with in the real life and how that functions in Barbie world. And it's fine. But like you say, once they get into the real world and the movie starts trying to make serious points, it's so tripping over its own feet to get to that it doesn't really think about what it actually says in relation to the rest of the film. And even, like the Mattel board makes no sense, because on the one hand, they're just exploitative and all they care about is just making money out of Barbie. But at the same time, they pretend like they actually care about it. Like, I don't know if I'm supposed to take them seriously, or they're supposed to be liars, or they're just supposed to be absolute clowns. The movie doesn't seem to know. And the resolution to it all is bizarre. I don't even know how to describe it. Like the way it tries to resolve the conflict in Barbie world.
What was the point of the movie?
The point
Women
of the movie
are
is
amazing, and men should just apologize for existing, I think.
Pretty much that. The point of the movie is actually expressed in, there's the song which occurs midway through. I think the song is called Closer to Fine. And if you read the lyrics for that song, it's all about how there's more than one answer to questions. There's multiple roads you can take to the right destination. That's essentially the entire point of the movie, is condensed in those song lyrics. That's what the movie is trying to say. It's trying to say, and if you read the interviews with Gerwig and people like that, she will say that all prescriptive systems are bad. The patriarchy is bad for men as well as for women. There is no one way to be a woman. You can only know you are a woman once you've found yourself, and there is no one way to do that. That's effectively what it's trying to say half of the time. And then the other half of the time is actually there are right and wrong ways to be, because if women choose to be happy with men, then they have been brainwashed by the equivalent of smallpox, and they must be deprogrammed at the back of a van by feminist speeches. So like, it's a confused film, but there's a nice half message in there somewhere.
I genuinely wish actually that I had so much time and leisure activity in my life that I could afford to be this fucking self-absorbed and this self-indulgent, that I could ponder questions like this endlessly and obsess over my own place in the world and how I'm oppressed and how unfair everything is and how hard everything is. I wish I had that time. It'd be great. You know, if I was living in some mansion in California and I could complain all day long about how the patriarchy puts me down, fantastic, man. It'd be great. And I could tweet it all out on my $1,000 iPhone. Be great.
Spoken like someone who benefited from the patriarchy.
That's exactly what a patriarch would say.
Maybe you created it. Maybe you go back in time when you're like 90 and you make sure it happens.
Yeah.
I've watched that movie.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Drinker finding young drinker.
The year is 2070. Women
I got
have
this
taken
idea
over
for
everything.
you. Yeah,
And Drinker's like,
idea
I
for
have
you,
to
boy.
go back and create the patriarchy.
Oh god, that fucking movie.
You're making me think of a Back to the Future reboot pitch now. So basically, like Marty McFly is a nihilistic doomer, and he uses Doc's time machine to go back to the 50s, and he brings all these photos with him, and his goal is to convince everyone to like reject feminism and modernism and everything, and say, no, just keep things the way they are now. Save the patriarchy.
The way the 50s are portrayed in Back to the Future, I honestly think people would go back there and just be like, you know what? I don't want to go back home. I'm just going to stay here. It's nice.
This is great.
Yeah, it's like
You see,
That could be his character arc. He doesn't want to
nobody
leave.
is morbidly obese. There's no like social media. Everyone's like relatively happy and content with their lot in life. It's like, this is fine. I can deal with
Yeah,
this.
houses don't cost $9
Happy
million.
times.
Yeah.
But you're not actually allowed to do that. There's a rule of physics. I think it's a law of physics that if you do go back in time and you sit down and you think, I actually would quite like to stay here, then Phoebe Waller-Bridge will appear, smack you in the face, and drag you back to the present. That has to happen. It's a law of Einsteinian relativity.
I'll take those odds. Me and Phoebe Waller-Bridge in a fist fight, I reckon I can do okay.
I don't know, man. Like she jumped onto a moving car, smashed the window, and held a 7-foot tall stuntman's arm on the car frame. Like she's
I
powerful.
refuse to watch that film.
It's a good move.
I want to say as well, like when we were talking earlier, like we were talking about Ken and Ryan Gosling's Oscar nomination. The Guardian weighed in on this, and I always go to the Guardian as the bastion of common sense and well-balanced opinions. But it says here, happy Kending, why righteous anger might be the role that wins Ryan Gosling an Oscar. He says here, snubs are not exactly uncommon during award season, not least because it's the only time of year when anyone actually uses the word snub. But the Oscar nominations pulled off what can only be described as a turbo snub by failing to recognize Greta Gerwig or Margot Robbie, the director and the lead actress of Barbie. The Academy managed to create a historic firestorm. Social media was furious.
They were nominated for awards. It was nominated for 8. They got 1 each. What the hell?
It's not enough, Platoon. They had to be nominated for every award ever, even from previous Oscars that have already happened.
Like, make an argument. Seriously, if you're going to say, Greta Gerwig was snubbed for director, like I explained earlier why I think the movie's not that great, and I think it's down to poor directing at times. But explain to me why, like, make an argument. Why do you think it's so well directed? If I'm going to make an argument for The Holdovers, I could say The Holdovers is excellently directed because it's a movie that could very easily be boring and fall into the kind of cliche tropes that you saw from those 1980s coming of age movies. It could basically just be an amalgamation of Fast Times at Ridgemont High and movies like that, Good Will Hunting, that kind of thing. You just smash them together. No, it's doing its own thing. It's quite original. Paul Giamatti's excellent in it. It's very well paced. It's nicely balanced between different characters. I can make an argument for why The Holdovers should have best director, but what is your argument for Barbie? Don't just complain and say this is a snub. Make an argument.
Well, we've got this article that's going to tell us the answers. It says, lucky for us all, a white knight has come to save us. Ryan Gosling, who did receive a nomination for Ken, released a statement that bristled with righteous fury at the snubs. Quote, there is no Ken without Barbie, and there's no Barbie movie without Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie, the two people most responsible for this history-making, globally celebrated film. No recognition would be possible for anyone on this film without their talent, grit, and genius.
Is that why Margot Robbie was up for Best Producer, by any chance? Because I think that's the award she was nominated for, which is, to do with her role in getting the film to happen, so she was recognized for that.
I mean, yeah. Well, genius, I mean, that's an interesting word to describe the people who made Barbie. But anyway, like,
didn't
to say that
the
I'm
producers approach Gal Gadot for the main role of Barbie instead of Margot Robbie?
They approached.
I think she the second choice.
No, it was originally going to star.
What's her name?
Fat, unfunny comedian.
She always talks about her vagina.
Amy Schumer. Yeah. So originally it was going to be Amy Schumer, but she dropped out because the movie was not feminist enough, apparently. So the mind boggles at what that might have entailed. But to say that I'm disappointed that they are not nominated in their respective categories would be an understatement. End quote. So, while it's fine to question the validity of this statement, the Oscars always nominates 5 people for Best Director and 10 movies for Best Picture. You can't argue with the fact that Gosling has his finger on the pulse. The world was lost and confused when Gerwig and Robbie weren't nominated. But in one fell swoop, Ryan Gosling was able to give voice to the frustration.
The
It was a canny
world.
move.
The world was lost and confused, was it?
The whole
world.
Honestly, the whole world was just. We stopped. No global events happened. Nothing happened.
The
Everyone
Israelis and the
just-
Palestinians stopped fighting and thought, "What the hell are the Oscars doing?" That's
the
a
Russians and the
travesty.
Ukrainians, they were like, you know what? We can't be shooting at each other anymore. We have to wait and see what's going to happen with this Barbie Oscars nomination thing. But it says it was a canny move because there's a universe in which Gosling's nomination made him a villain of the story because, you know, we all hate to see guys succeed at anything, you know. As the meme shared by your most basic friends on Instagram yesterday explained, a man getting the credit for a woman's work is sort of the entire point of Barbie. And so it wouldn't be hard for public opinion to turn on him for precisely this reason. But by defending Gerwig and Robbie so trenchantly, that isn't going to happen now. So essentially, he had to recognize his privilege, he had to apologize for existing, and he had to elevate the women around him.
Well,
I mean, you already played Ken, mate. You've already been bent over a table and butt fucked by Gerwig and Robbie. What more do you have to do?
It's pretty ironic too that the statements involve like there is, you know, my contributions are nothing without, you know, everyone else, and that my role is this and that. And it's like, isn't the point of the film at the end for Ken that he's more than an accessory to Barbie?
No, it's not. It's that he should know his place and he should stop questioning the matriarchy.
There you go. I guess it matches up then.
That's what you can draw from the movie, but that's not what the movie wants you to think. And I think that's the big difference. People see him.
It kind of glorifies atomization at the end. So Ken, I mean, from the perspective of the movie, Ken's arc at the finish is that he has finally come to accept himself as himself, and this necessarily means that he is single and alone and without Barbie. And Barbie, she's off. She's going to go be a career woman and be single and wake up at 40 wishing that she had actually not rejected Ken. And that's atomization. It's a movie which glorifies the kind of individualized, atomized society that is glorified by a very small number of people who want to rule over all of us. With I despise that ending so much, but
yeah, the rest of the film's great.
Oh yeah, the rest is amazing.
Yeah,
she just dropped the ball with the ending, with the hideous ending.
I love the previous 2 hours of shitting on men and everything even resembling masculinity, and then topping it all off with a big dramatic talk about how hard women have it in life. Written by a millionaire Californian woman who's literally the most protected group of humans that have ever existed in all of history. Sure, yeah, tell us more. I'm ready to hear it.
Cringe.
It was fantastic. But yeah, it's essentially like he had to know how to play his cards on this one because he was recognized for being successful because he was good at what he did. But that's not nice in today's society. And so he has to apologize for his success and try to pull up the less accomplished people around him.
There's another angle.
That recognition.
There's another angle to this that I think merits some discussion. It's basically everyone's talking about the fact that Greta Gerwig wasn't nominated or Margot Robbie wasn't nominated. If you were one of the actresses or the directors that were nominated, you'd be pretty pissed off. You'd be like, what the fuck? Did I not deserve this? Should Greta Gerwig be here instead of me? It was like when Mike Tyson was knocked out by what's his name? What was the name of that guy that got that upset over Mike Tyson? It was Mike Tyson's first loss. What was that guy's name?
Holyfield?
No. It was Buster Douglas, was it?
Oh, now you're asking, actually, yeah.
Chat, help us out.
Buster Douglas, I think it was. Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson, right?
Yeah, Buster.
And all anybody ever talked about was Mike Tyson lost, Mike Tyson. And Buster Douglas said that ruined what should have been the greatest night of his life and the greatest sort of period of his life because he felt like they robbed him of his victory because no one was talking about what he did, right? It was all what Tyson didn't do. And it's like that same thing going on here. Instead of people celebrating the directors that were nominated and the actresses that were nominated, they won't shut up about Barbie. It's really unfair.
It's also that they won't shut up about Ken in particular. And so that's the other point is that lots of people are making these cross-category comparisons. Well, Ken was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but Margot Robbie was overlooked for Best Actress, as though those people are in competition with each other. they're not. But all the time we are spending talking about Ken means that we will actually probably forget within about 5 seconds who even wins the Best Actress category. A woman will actually win that award and will have done a really good job, and they'll deserve probably that reward, and no one will know who the hell they are or what they got it for, because we are all talking about Ken, which is exactly how the film panned out as well. So that's the irony. Some people have tried to say that a man getting rewarded for women's work is basically the plot of the film. It's not that. It's that the film itself isn't worth anything except for the man, and the filmmakers hate that fact. And the same thing is playing out with the Oscars as well.
Yeah, if you want to help women, talk about the women that were nominated.
Yeah, that would be a much preferable way to go about it. The third angle as well is that probably more people are now talking about the Oscars than otherwise would have been talking about the Oscars, because I think most people are quite happy to write the Oscars off as pretty much an irrelevance these days, or certainly massively declining relevance. This has been a really good way to get people talking about that subject, and I do wonder whether that's a factor in it as well.
Do you think that I mean, does the Oscars have a marketing department that will send out press packs encouraging the likes of The Guardian to talk about stuff like this?
Almost certainly.
They've done a good job then.
I mean, I think a movie like this, because it was such a, and I hate to say this fucking word, but like a cultural moment, just like Black Panther was, it like almost like eclipses the actual artistic merits of the film, whatever they might be. Pretty limited in this case.
Genius
But
marketing.
Black Panther got nominated, didn't it? That was embarrassing.
The marketing.
But it's like movies which, and we know exactly why they get nominated, is because they say the right things, they push the right angle, they project the right political messaging into the world, and so they're almost guaranteed an Oscar because they are a huge platform. They're not a piece of artistic work, they are a platform by which you can project this stuff. And so when a movie like Barbie, which already dominated the summer box office season, so if people were already talking about it, the Oscars can leech off the success of that movie, which also aligns perfectly with what everyone in the Oscar committee believes in anyway. They can just have this perfect synergy of politics, commercial success, merge it together into box office gold. That's where they're going with this. Like, that's why Barbie's been nominated for so many fucking categories. It's not a piece of art by any normal sense. It is a massively commercialized advert for a doll that spouts a lot of like barely coherent feminist rhetoric, which people may or may not even understand as they're watching it, but it doesn't matter.
Hey, Pirates of the Caribbean was based after a theme park ride, and you know what? It was baller.
The difference being that was actually a fun movie.
The difference being it's good. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, this is what the Oscars do every so often. They will latch on to a movie which marries box office success with a social cause that they very much believe in, and of course it's going to get nominations.
Yeah, and there's a whole genre of entertainment which is effectively just Oscar bait entertainment. Anytime you see a small budget film which is featuring a black disabled gay person with an adopted kid, you know that film's only really being made because they want to be in contention for the Oscars. And the Oscars does benefit from it as well, in the sense that when that film is inevitably overlooked, or a film like it, because there are so many of them, are eventually overlooked, then you get once every few years this massive social campaign against the Oscars. It was Oscars so white a few years ago. Now it's the Oscars is deeply, deeply sexist. And it's all people mostly on the outside who have no particular interest in film or art in general. Hillary Clinton tried to make it all about herself, as everything is, for example. But it's just this weird feedback loop where the Oscars really just exists to gain notoriety as opposed to really giving fame to the people it's rewarding.
But I think the difference being here, like it's certainly the case that you do get Oscar bait films, but they're usually low budget and nobody's watched them and they are just obscure. And so fine, they exist in their tiny little bubble, but like this movie broke through into having a mainstream cultural footprint.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was almost inevitable that the Oscars were going to try and capitalize on something like that because, one, it was massively successful. Everyone was talking about it throughout the summer, and it champions a cause that they clearly believe in. And so it was the perfect combination for them. Of course, it was going to get Oscar nominations.
Did the Barbenheimer...
Sorry, go ahead.
Did the Barbenheimer phenomenon help it? Whoever came up with that?
No, I think it helped Oppenheimer, sadly.
Okay.
I
I'd
think
say
it helped
both.
Oppenheimer. I mean, it
1.4
possibly
billion?
it possibly helped Barbie a little bit, but I think it helped Oppenheimer way more than it helped Barbie. I think that movie was going to be massive no matter what. Like the marketing campaign for that was just unparalleled.
Yeah, and I mean Barbie's a big IP as is. There's going to be not like the same level as something like a Mario, but
You
doesn't surprise me hugely that it'll draw in an audience to be out of just strict curiosity, especially with the trailers.
Where I live, South Korea, Barbie flopped and Oppenheimer was a big hit.
That was not the case in the rest of the world.
It's but I just find that
Unfortunately.
I find that funny. The Western press were they were printing articles that were almost angry at South Korea. Like, is South Korea sexist because Barbie wasn't popular?
But don't the Koreans really enjoy anything that effectively ends with Japanese people being killed? So.
Yes. I went to see Oppenheimer on like a Wednesday afternoon, and there were a bunch of school kids. Like the thing was packed, and apparently the Koreans were hoping to see Japan atom bombed at the end. For anyone listening, wondering why that is, it's because Japan colonized Korea from 1905 until they were defeated in 1945.
Although in the Japanese defense, the Koreans were part of the Mongol invasions of Japan, and they didn't like them very much for that. So,
True.
I think Oppenheimer is out in Japan in March.
it is, coming soon, isn't it? It'll be interesting to see how that does. I think there is supposed to be some
bomb?
latent interest. Oh, someone has to do. Why does that always, every single
Because I'm
time?
sad and predictable.
I mean, it could have been worse. They could have released it in July, you know.
It'll bomb twice, though, won't it? Moving on.
Anyway, moving on to another topic. Well, we're all excited to know that Madam Web is coming out soon because, like, we were all blown away by that trailer. Like the exposition dumps in that were like so slick and so well done. I just loved it, but it's not going to get a good reception. Apparently, according to the box office tracking, it says that Madam Web is tracking for a worse box office opening than Morbius. According to Box Office Pro, which is generally fairly accurate. The upcoming superhero team-up movie is currently tracking to earn between 25 million and 35 million in its opening weekend at the box office.
Yeah,
if Madam Web does end up launching somewhere in that range, it would mark the lowest opening weekend yet for an SSU franchise. Morbius currently has the worst opening weekend at 39 million, followed by Venom at 80 million, and then Let There Be Carnage at 90 million. Even if it comes in on the higher end of its tracking, its opening would still be lower than The Marvels, another female-fronted superhero movie that opened with 46.1 million. So it's not looking good for Madam Web.
You know, there's two of the guys who wrote because there's 4 screenwriters for Madam Web, and 2 of them are the screenwriters from Morbius. They're like anti-geniuses. I don't know what it is, but they're like anti-geniuses. They have something. They infuse something into a script that is just so memeable.
Yep, it's because this is Sony's like take on the superhero universe, isn't it? They're trying to get their Venom verse off the ground, and it's so weird because, like, on the one hand, you got the MCU, which like was massive, and now it's fallen off a cliff and just like imploded. You've got the DCU, which never really got off the ground and then just shit his pants and passed out on the ground in a pool of its own vomit. And then in between them, you've got this tiny little like Sony Venom verse, which is like trying to draw in characters that it happens to have the rights to for these little movies that go nowhere. And oh, God bless them. Like, I love them for trying, but wow, they've released some turds, man.
Morbius was released twice.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
flopped twice. Speaking of a movie that bombed twice,
that was where the studio saw the meme campaign and actually thought it was genuine fan enthusiasm and thought, we'll re-release it.
So embarrassing. Yeah, and then Venom does suspiciously well a lot, and it's just like they're on their 3rd one coming up now, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a 3rd Venom movie coming out.
Yeah, they just make loads of money.
I've seen both of them at the cinema, and I could not tell you a single thing about either of them.
Same.
Tom Hardy is in them.
Forgotten everything.
I remember one scene where he eats a piece of pizza out of a garbage can, and that's literally the only thing I can remember. hideously ugly. They've got these. A lot of the big battle scenes take place at night, and Venom is black, and usually his opponents are also very dark colored. So you literally can't see what's happening. It's a hideous movie.
Drinker, if all I can say about Venom 2 is that it stars Tom Hardy and it's directed by Andy Serkis, so the equivalent of a Chris Stuckman review, then yes, it must have left 0 on me. I've got
Okay,
nothing.
come on. Let's not. It's not that bad. It's not Chris Stuckman review level.
Do you want to segue into some totally irrelevant discussion about your childhood, about how you used to go to the movie theaters and you used to like Venom?
Did the movie make you think deeply about anything, or was it just?
Venom is a character that I know not much about. Thank you.
I watched this movie
Right.
and I came really close to having an opinion, and then I thought, no, I shouldn't do
No, not today.
that.
I suppressed those feelings.
You know how they talk about chaotic neutrals in terms of human psychology and so on. Like, what is Chris Stuckman's version of that? He's like a
neutral,
a placid neutral, like
placid beige.
Yeah, I don't have any opinions about anything really.
It's so nice that they made a film. Thank you.
But yeah, Madam Web I feel like I say this about a lot of superhero movies now, especially from DC, but it feels like a movie that belonged to a very different era of filmmaking. It feels like a film that they should have released 5-6 years ago, and it might have done okay. People might actually have cared. They are so over these kinds of films now. And the fact that it's coming out at this time of year,
we might also be getting to the point where it's going to do more damage in the long run than it will give anybody any benefit, because there was a time throughout, so maybe 2008 through 2015, 16, even 2019, when it was sort of ingrained in the audience's mind that you go and see these films because they are all in some sense connected. You're not in the habit of missing them during the high days of Marvel. The more of them that come out, even if they're not MCU properties, superhero films in general, the more of them that come out that you just think, nah, not for me, or no, I can't be bothered, or it doesn't matter because it's not going anywhere. I think the more it gets set in the audience's mind that these things are not sort of these marquee events anymore, you don't need to go and see all the superhero films. And so when the next big one comes out, more people will be minded to say, probably not going to go see that one actually, because they're used to dropping out of these stories.
Is this release same day as Argyle?
Maybe.
question.
I'm sure it is.
I just wanted to suggest that it's just bold of you that you'd assume that they're going to decide not to watch it as opposed to they've even heard of it.
I discovered a really bizarre fact about Madam Web while I was researching it. Did you know that this is a period movie? It's set in 2003.
2003.
What?
Yeah.
Exactly what?
It's a standalone.
I heard about that because it's got something to do with they were going to try and tie it in with particular Spider-Man, right?
Something like, I think it ended up in 2003 by accident. They were going to do it in the 90s, I think, to tie it in with a different, maybe a Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, which doesn't make any fucking sense.
But they did reshoots, but the only way they could do the reshoots cheaply but was to make it look like 2003. They couldn't get it to look like modern day. I'm not sure. It's a bit of a convoluted mess, but it makes it even more of a meme.
Are they going to try and tie it in with the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy?
From what I heard, the intention was to tie it to Andrew Garfield, but then they'd set it on a timeline that's earlier even than Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. So they couldn't use any of them or something. There's like a huge fuck-up. That's what I was told anyway.
Uncle Ben and Aunt May are in the movie.
They like made a mistake on the timelines. I don't know. Like I've had people tell me this, and I was just like, "You fucking kidding me? How does this even happen? Like, how do you fuck up this badly?"
Is it timey-wimey shit?
I mean, is there anything that... I mean, getting away from the memes, is there anything that actually recommends the movie commercially? Is there any reason audiences would show up to this?
Not at this. Like, Madam Web, no one's heard of her. No one cares. No one's into superhero movies, so like they're not going to be even motivated to learn about the character. So I don't think there's anything...
There's no actors or actresses that are going to draw audiences.
Not really, no. And
it's not
the fact that the fact that it's getting released at this time of year, this is the dumping ground for shit movies that the studios know that nobody wants. So yeah, January, February, you're.
I think you just like ended the whole conversation with that statement.
I mean, at least they
Killed it.
know that it's a flop. At least they know it's a flop.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. I've got nothing to say to that.
Like,
fucked,
it's such an interesting film that there is absolutely nothing to say.
that's so normal at this point. There's like, what is that? Is that a surprise? Like, no.
I don't think I've even seen the trailer for it. I don't care. I mean, I'm going to have to see it because I'll probably end up covering it. But I know nothing about the character. I've not seen the trailer. I don't know anything about it, and I fully expect to have forgotten it within 2 weeks of it coming out, like Echo. But yeah, if they know it's a flop, though, surely they'll take a lesson from that and stop doing it. And yet they keep doing it over.
I mean,
over
they probably will to some extent take a lesson from it. Like MauLer said, the Venom movies, I think, make money somehow.
They do.
They are somehow successful, even though nobody remembers them and nobody knows what the hell the point of them
Well,
is.
apparently they got it in their head like a lot of people do. It's just like, so we can make anything and makes money. It's like, do you not have a team that can tell you how this works? Like, Venom and its vague connections to a multiverse are enough to drag it through, but like I wouldn't even expect necessarily that it's something that like, you know, can go for any more than 2 films. I have no idea. I don't know how long Tom Hardy's going to be an asset for you. Like, who knows?
Would Venom make money if they make a third Venom? Surely it's going to flop. I mean, look what happened to Aquaman 2. Aquaman 2 is a flop, and Aquaman 1 made over $1 billion.
If they threw in a Spider-Man, like, it gets complicated in terms of how much attention it can get. Spider-Man's pretty audience drawing at this point. At least he's the biggest audience draw for all the superhero characters right now.
It would need to be Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield, I think, in order for it to be a genuine success.
I don't know why anyone has got it in their head that Tom Holland is less of a draw than Andrew Garfield when the Amazing Spider-Man movies failed.
Can they use Tom Holland? Because he's because I know the
Sony
rights, the copyright's a bit confused. So
as far as I know, that's the plan that they're fighting right now over. I saw some article or tweet about whether or not they're going to make Spider-Man 4's story grounded or spectacle-ish. Like that's what Sony and Kevin Feige are fighting over.
Yeah, I saw the article too. They want all 3 Spider-Men in Spider-Man 4. Saw
that was a one-shot deal. That really feels like the kind of thing they should have done once, and it was a nice gimmick. It was cool to see them all together.
But they want money.
Yeah.
And the bean counter said, if you do more multiverse stuff, maybe more money. I don't know why they keep saying this. Someone needs to stop them. Who's the guy that keeps telling them this?
Well, it's I talked about this just recently. The problem with multiverses is that you have to keep them very contained before they spill over into everything and destroy everything that you've created. Make it a very brief window into different realities if you really have to do it. That's why No Way Home worked so well. It was just confined to the Spider-Man universe. It wasn't the fate of all reality or anything that was at stake. And it was a neat little concept, and it was wrapped up in a really good character-driven drama. That's what made it work. You try to exploit that even more, you're just going to go down the same road that you've always gone down with the multiverse stuff, like with Multiverse of Madness. You end up with garbage because you're trying to incorporate way too much stuff, way too many stakes into what should be a self-contained story.
It's also hard to see how you could even repeat the No Way Home trick without just effectively replaying large plot beats. I mean, one of the other things that I think made No Way Home such a draw and such a success is that, you're right, the multiverse works because it's a momentary intrusion that is resolved by the close of the film. But during that momentary intrusion, you've got effectively the character resolutions for the other previous 2 Spider-Men and all of the main and important villains. So you've pretty much run through your major plot beats that you could use some sort of crossover with. I'm struggling to think doing something like that again, how you would build on that in a way that's not just, oh, look, Dr. Octopus is back again, or the Spider-Men are back again. But yeah, is there any new ground to be plumbed with that, or was that just a one-off?
It's been strip mined. Both those trilogies have been strip mined. They've been thoroughly plundered. There's nothing else that you could really put on screen that audiences would care about from any those 6 movies with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire.
What you think?
I think so. I think they've been thoroughly plundered. I mean, all the best villains were there. The 2 main Spider-Men were there.
But we progressed them, right? Like you put Spider-Man. If I'm not saying they would do this, they should. But if they had a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 4, we would just give him a new villain, his own vision. It could fucking be the Mysterio they were going to run, or their own Vulture that they were going to run. Right? You could do anything you want, really.
Could they
Especially
I understood that they were interested in doing more Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies because he was up for doing it. He was still young enough to play the character, and they were interested in like starting his movies up again. But it seems like nothing's really come of that, like independently.
Why not do 3?
I think it's all been talked about. It's in a weird position right now, I think, because there's so many choices you can make, but you've got to commit to one, and as soon as you do, it knocks out the rest, basically. Like, you wouldn't want to make a Andrew Garfield sequel, Tobey Maguire sequel, and Spider-Man 4 with Tom Holland. You need to focus, and if you do, then that cancels out the other ones.
And you got Spider-Verse as well.
Yep.
Well, the
I know it's not connected, but
you got fucking Madam Web too.
But if you do Tom Holland, then you have to share like 25% of your revenue with Marvel. Whereas if you got Andrew Garfield, and as far as I understand it, then he's yours, and you can just make 100% of the profits. Tobey Maguire, like, you know, I love him and stuff, but like he's probably too old now, and he's done his trilogy. He got like effectively his 4th movie with you know, No Way Home. He doesn't need to do any more. There's less incentive for him to do it. Whereas Andrew Garfield, I think, is more of a viable prospect.
Damn, Drinker, Gary would beat you up for saying all this.
I'm just saying, like, you know, you almost have to look at it from the point of view of like tarnishing your own legacy. And I think Maguire like can at least rest easy and say, like, you know, I had 2 good movies and 1, and then like a 4th one that just really brought everything back. So that's 4 films that I've done.
Old bastards like me might enjoy a Maguire movie though.
Maybe,
yeah, but you didn't enjoy The Flash
then...
with Michael Keaton in it just because you can bring back the nice old guy.
Okay, but No Way Home is historically considered to be one of the only things that were worthwhile in phases 4 and 5 put together. So
I guess the point I'm making here is like, if you're a studio that wants to set up the idea of bringing back a really like not a really popular Spider-Man, but like a man who like has kind of redeemed himself now and is you know, is a good prospect and is still young enough to play the role for a few more years, and is up for doing it, I think Garfield would probably be your better choice. That's all I'm saying. Like, from a studio point of view, that's who I would pick.
But like, I wonder if they have a bit of reservation about it because of the success of Amazing Spider-Man, and then of course everything's just in flux right now. I don't know. I assume that we're getting delays on everything because they just don't know what the correct decision is.
Quite possibly.
Well, we're not getting a delay on Madam Web because that's still coming out.
Well, that's a sure thing, Platoon. Like, when they know they can win with that one.
The weird thing is that's one of the only superhero movies that's going to come out this year. We got Madam Web and we got Deadpool 3.
Deadpool.
And that's it, pretty much.
What a shame.
A very light year for superhero films, and I think it's exactly what the world
Craven as well, apparently.
Is that coming out this year, is it?
Yeah, Stuart says don't forget Craven. That's at the
Don't
end of the
sleep
year.
on Craven, everybody.
I think we all did forget Craven, I guess.
And in 5 minutes' time, I'll have forgotten it again.
Yes.
It's another one of those characters I know nothing about. Same Madam Web and Craven. I know nothing about them. I am not a big comic book person, so the success of the MCU was, I think, in large part because they picked all of these very important core casts that even people who weren't very familiar with comics at least partially recognized. And you can bank on that. And once you've got those normal people through the seats, then you can start actually building some sort of cinematic universe. We've gone through all of them. We haven't replaced them with anybody equivalently recognizable. And now we are plumbing the depths of the barrel, scraping the depths of the barrel even. Madam Web. That's not going to be drawing many normal, like, non-comic book readers, I don't think, to that. I don't think it'll be drawing many comic book readers either. But
also, as I mentioned earlier, and someone actually in chat was saying that Spider-Man's always been the most profitable. That's just how it is. Like, no, the Amazing Spider-Man times, it like crashed and they worried about it when Batman at one point took over. But we're now in a position that's really fucking odd of almost all the superhero characters aren't enough to pull people in. People wonder if like a Fantastic Four, would that do well? It's like, I'm not sure anymore. I don't know. But Spider-Man is the only
not
one
with Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic. That's for fucking sure.
He's
Well,
too
know
old.
that
Pedro's too
He
old,
is too old.
and that's coming from me.
And the Matt
No, he is
Reeves
too old
like
for that.
Batman franchise, if the second one only pulls in like 600 million, that's probably over. So it needs to, you know, everything is just in a weird place right now. And I'm not even sure Spider-Man, even though he's on top, can guarantee do it. It's all a big worry.
Because you
It's
think they're
not
probably putting
guaranteed, but
everything behind the acquisition of the X-Men coming out. Fantastic Four and X-Men are the next sort of very, very big, universally recognized properties that will be in their hands before too long. But maybe before too long is still too long away because the interest will have died completely by the time we even get them.
Does anyone here think that the superhero movies can make a comeback post 2023?
I mean, they don't deserve it right now. You need to fucking shut up and sit down for a
Deadpool
bit.
might. I think Deadpool will do okay.
I think
I have no clue
I
on
think
Deadpool.
it's done. I think it's done. It's like westerns.
I honestly think what we need is
Go
a break for a few years. We need a few years off from superhero movies, and we
5
need a
years.
break. We need a break from extended universes. Like, fine, give us a standalone Batman movie or a standalone Spider-Man movie, whatever, or a standalone Superman movie. They'll probably do fine because those characters are so iconic. Fucking even normies know who they are. But this idea of we're still going to have these decrepit old extended universes with obscure characters that nobody outside of like comic book fandoms has ever heard of, those days are gone. They're not coming back.
I still think you can keep an element of the extended universe, but I think you massively need to contract the scope of that extended universe. I always thought the natural course of action when the beginning of Phase 4 comes along, what you really need to do is to keep the shared universe, but you need to bring it very much back literally down to Earth. You need to have all of these people, all of your new characters, principally Spider-Man, Daredevil, the local street tier heroes, you can start to rebuild from the ground up, much as Phase 1 itself did. You can have ways of getting your legacy cast from Phase 3 back into that as well. But then at least you've reset the board in that situation. You can start progressing stories naturally and relatably. What you don't want to do is, effectively your first entry in Phase 4, is to say, right now is an unquantifiable multiverse, and no one knows what's going on anymore, and no one knows where anybody is or who all of these people are. It's a bad way of introducing your new characters because they are just going to be lost in the infinite multiverse in that situation. If you actually introduce people like even someone like Riri Williams in a grounded Earth-based story, which actually overlaps with recognizable people like Spider-Man, then you might have had a bit more luck with her. But tacking her in randomly to Wakanda Forever, which makes no sense anyway, is not the way to actually rebuild your cast of characters.
Didn't they try that a little bit with Blue Beetle? Excuse me. I mean, obviously that was at the end of the DCU, but the Blue Beetle was a small, more, I mean, not grounded. It's obviously still a big, crazy, unrealistic thing, but it's compared to the multiverse stuff, it's more small scale, and it was a financial disaster. I'm not sure that there is even an appetite among audiences for those smaller, non-multiverse related movies anymore in the superhero genre.
They need to build towards something. I think you can have the best of both in that situation. You begin from the ground up, but you still give the impression that there is a grander story towards which everything is leading. And one of the problems with Blue Beetle is that, as you say, it was the tail end of the DCU. We don't even know if the character is going to reappear at any point, and there's no obvious tie-in with a grander story that anybody's invested in. So it's another one of those missable superhero films in a way that I think if you'd begun Phase 4 with a clear sense of direction from the ground up, it might not have had that same dynamic. That said, Marvel's tried some of the local stuff already. Echo was not like billed as this grounded character-based story. It's not what we got, but that's what it was billed as. Same thing with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and to a lesser degree, WandaVision. So it's done these things in isolation, but the grander problem is that because you have this multiverse, none of them are leading into each other. They are not supporting each other. They are all just disappearing into the void. And that makes them even more forgettable than they already were, which is significantly.
It's fucked.
Partial mention of the DC universe there. Have you seen people talking about the fact that the final scene in the Snyderverse, DCverse is Patrick Wilson eating a cockroach sandwich?
Oh, yes.
That's how they say goodbye
and be happy.
Do you know what? It's a perfect metaphor because he gives away a little token of gold. It's a big gold coin, and he gives it away for this shitty, horrible sandwich. And that's kind of like the DC, because I saw a video yesterday. It was a guy who went through the entire DC EU or DCU, whatever the hell it's called. Basically everything from the first Superman movie up to Aquaman, to all the movies they released, and he said, did these things make money? And he did everything. He did box office, he did some merchandising, physical sales, and he basically concluded that ultimately it probably just lost a small amount of money. So for all that effort, they got nothing.
It's over. But hey, you guys remember the Dark Universe? I'll never let them forget that. We're gonna get
Tom.
the Mummy, Frankenstein, and Jekyll and
Oh
Hyde.
man.
shit! Yeah.
Yeah.
That was going to be a thing, wasn't it? I don't think I've ever seen a cinematic universe die as quickly as that.
They had who was it? He was going to play Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Russell Crowe.
Russell
They were
Crowe,
going
yeah.
to
Russell
have
Crowe, yeah.
him do a Hyde movie, a Jekyll and Hyde movie. That would have been bizarre.
Wasn't that Kurtzman behind the Dark Universe?
I think it might have been actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was another one of his victories.
Because
So
Drinko was saying enough of these standard universes, but you don't want to kill the Godzilla and Kong extended universe, do you?
Oh,
I
please
mean,
do,
that's just
please.
pure gold. Like, I love that.
Mining
Can
that
we-
for all it's worth.
Could we bring the action movie back? I think it's long overdue.
It
I think it's
very much
yeah.
is.
I mean, the appetite is there because John
Long
Wick 4 was very
overdue.
successful. Extraction 2, at one point last year, was the most watched movie in the world. It might have even been the most successful streaming movie of 2023.
Yeah,
And those were the two big action movies last year.
yeah. The
Well,
chat
I've
have been
seen
saying
appetite
action
for it.
movies. Yeah.
I've definitely
agree
said
with you.
this previously. Like when people say, like, well, what's going to step in to replace superhero films? And my guess is either just it's going to be sort of fairly generic action movies, or it's going to be video game adaptations.
Mhm.
It's going to be one of those two things. Because
they're
we
all-
are overdue a new craze. And like action movies are not so much a craze because they've always kind of been there, but like, potentially they fill a gap. But I think video game adaptations will
Few
probably be
people
the next
saying
thing.
bring back comedy.
I
You can't,
don't
because
trust
we're not
any
allowed to be
person.
funny.
Yeah,
Not
well,
funny,
you're not
though.
allowed to be funny, and no one
Christ.
involved in writing scripts can be funny anyway, even if they were allowed to be. They don't know how to do it. So I think that would be tragic to see them try and bring comedy back. But
Yeah, at least they're allowed to have action scenes and comedy scenes. Fuck that. There's no way they can make those.
yeah,
Yeah, pretty much every joke would just be like, white men, am I right? Come
But
on, laugh.
the
Jennifer
I will
Lawrence
say,
brought back comedy.
American
No hard
Fiction
feelings.
made me laugh a bunch. Actually,
Mhm.
I don't think I'm not sure if it's actually classified as comedy. I guess it partially is, but plenty of drama in it as well. But it's like I said, easy recommendation for especially for what we've been talking about in this stream. There's several like examples of just the advantage that gets taken from societal and cultural elements. I've seen some people say that it's not as funny as they were hoping it would be. If you've seen the trailer, it looks like it's going to be a lot more absurdist, but it's actually pretty grounded. The film's like B plot is almost trying to prove the point of the A plots one, which is that we've gotten a little bit too upset. The way I'd summarize it for anybody who doesn't know what it's about, if you've seen the Community episode that regards like progressive values being turned in on themselves, it's like racism. The new racism is not being racist, basically. So if you watch the trailer, it's about a guy who is trying to be successful as an author, and he writes a book,
Not
and they
Will,
say
is it?
like, sorry,
It's not Will, is it? Trying to be successful.
no,
Moving on.
Some fucking
Killed it.
hack named Will Jordan. Like, yeah, forget about him.
But he writes a book, and his like publisher is telling him that he's got to make it a bit more like black. Basically, he's got to have it be a bit more like it's sellable in that range because they need more diversity, like in their sort of sales departments and stuff. And so then he does a book as a joke, and like the primary joke from the trailer is he calls the book My Pathology, but he spells it with an F, pathology, and the whole book is written that way. And you get a scene as well that's really good where he's interacting with his own characters as he writes them, and they're like retarded, and there's all this kind of crazy shit. And then the book actually kicks off, like it starts doing well, and he doesn't know what the fuck is going on anymore because he did it all as a joke. I wouldn't want to say any more than that, but I don't know. It was kind of funny. It was kind of refreshing.
It is. It's probably the funniest movie of the year because there were no comedies. There was No Hard Feelings by Jennifer Lawrence, which I've seen, unfortunately. It's not an awful movie, but it's pretty crap. But yeah, American Fiction's great. It's a really good satire, and it's a necessary satire because it does satirize that sort of progressive regressive culture whereby you're so progressive that you're actually pulling society backward, and you're basically creating, I would call it, cultural segregation. Disney do this, for example. I actually heard a rumor that Disney are now not allowing animators to animate characters that are not of their own skin color, because they do this with voice acting. You're not. If you're a
that
white
legit
man,
would not surprise me.
Christ.
if you're a white man, you can't voice act the black character now, right? Which is absurd, obviously, for lots of reasons. But it's it is the logical continuation of that policy. So it's that kind of cultural segregation. That's what the movie, I think, is satirizing, and I like that a lot. I mean, obviously, I'm biased in that way. I'm going to approve of the movie because its politics agree with my own. But at the same time, it succeeds in satire in the way, for example, something like Barbie feels miserably. Like that's it. That's satire really well done.
I felt like the film had a level-headed approach as well. One of the final arguments between two of the characters doesn't have a well, then the correct answer is X. It's more of a they explain the problem and then they're like not sure what the solution is. Basically, that's the film doesn't give you a strong direction, I don't think, but at the same time points out and laughs at a lot of the stupid shit
what did you think of the ending, MauLer? Because it's something like it's a weird ending.
I am heavily biased in favor of it, and I'll tell you exactly why. I don't know if you guys know, but we covered one of the top streamers of all like engagement ever called XQC, and one of the clips that we covered is he didn't know what condensation was. His fans had to explain it to him. He basically, there's this clip where he says, "I grabbed my can of whatever, I brought it up to my room, and then it was wet." That doesn't make any sense. And his fans told him what condensation was, and by the end of him Googling it and reading it, he said, "So water just appears out of nowhere." Okay. At the end of this film, you already know what I'm going to be talking about. Despot.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. Me, friggin' Rice, couldn't fucking believe it. There's this airheaded director that the main character's talking to about adapting his story into a film. And as they're like back and forth things, some fucking PA comes up to him and hands him his can that he wanted. And he grabs it and he goes, "Why is this wet?" And the guy goes, "Well, condensation." And then he goes, "What are you, a fucking weatherman?" And he said, as the guy walks away, he goes, "Never again."
Yeah, that was a lovely little moment.
Yeah, when they did that, I was like, holy shit, I love this film. Like, I wonder if they actually got that from the viral clip. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's definitely something to recommend. And also Sterling K. Brown, he's the gay brother, right?
Yeah.
He's really good. He's really funny in it.
Yeah, he's excellent in it.
I mean, Sterling K. Brown is always pretty reliable.
No relation, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, the only other thing I was curious about was Rings of Power, which we all loved. It was a real hit when it first came out. But they have wrapped production on season 2, or so they claim, and that was way back in, I think, September, October of last year. Now we still haven't seen anything even resembling a trailer, and there's no indication of when it's going to come out, and it's fueling rumors that the season has been delayed. They're probably going to make the argument that it was because of the strikes and so on, but it wasn't, because they were able to wrap filming successfully. They got everything that they needed. And the current crop of rumors that are now doing the rounds is that they're actually going to reshoot large portions of this and remake it. The showrunners, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, have apparently been demoted in the interim. Like between seasons 1 and 2, they've been demoted from showrunners to like consulting producers, or whatever the ridiculous term is. Yeah, pretty much. And so the question mark that's hanging over this show now is, what are they going to do with it? Are they going to delay it? Are they going to like try and salvage something from this show? Because everything that we're hearing so far just leaves a giant question over what is even going on with it. This is $1 billion show, everyone.
From what I remember, season 1 came out in September of 2022. So I don't know if they are going to effectively just hold it until roughly the same time for each year of release. That might just be the simplest explanation, is that that's the release window they've got down, because that's the one they went with last time, and the market research told them that that would have been the best time to do it. But against that, you can find interviews where they say that they think it's very important that we have as minimal a gap between seasons as possible, so speed is of the essence. And if they've already finished filming, then yeah, waiting till September if you also want to be quick doesn't really add up. I don't know. I've not seen very much about this, except that I keep an eye on the analytics for my Rings of Power videos. And so when they start ticking up again, because Amazon is spending hundreds of millions of pounds on YouTube advertisements, then I'll know it's coming. It's like feeling it in the waters or the wind.
Yeah. No, I mean, I ask about this because, yeah, there seems to be rumors doing the rounds that this season has been a troubled one. and they kind of recognized the problems that they had with the first season, and they're trying to correct it, because the backlash that we saw to season 1 was immense, and it was kind of admirable in a lot of ways, because you can't even make the argument really that it was a divisive show. It seems like pretty much everyone thought it was garbage, and so it almost united the Lord of the Rings fandom in their condemnation of it.
We covered someone who loved it, apparently, right? Drinker and in encompassing their entire praise of the show. They were like, CG, wow, that was great. The CG was so good. Special effects, yes. The CG
was great.
Wow. Yeah, so it's great. We were like,
because CG.
Like, I mean, do you want to talk about the writing? It's like, no.
Because we've had trailers for season 2 of House of the Dragon. Sorry, the name escaped me there. So it just you've essentially got 2 shows that are roughly contemporary with each other, but one seems to have progressed so much better than the other.
And with a fraction of the publicity as well. I remember the nice thing about House of the Dragon season 1 is that it didn't come out of completely nowhere. I did see the occasional advertisement for it, say on the tube in London or on the television, but not very much, and I didn't know a huge amount about it. And it didn't seem to have a huge amount of fanfare when it did first launch. And obviously coming off the back of the disaster of Game of Thrones season 8, had a lot of making up to do. But it made up for it almost immediately and then spread rapidly through word of mouth, which is always going to be way cheaper than Amazon's marketing budget is. Which seems to be spent principally on trying to take down YouTube videos which are critical of your work. But it was nice to see the counterpoint. Here is a faithful and well-written fantasy adaptation, which had very little by way of support comparatively, and it's just blown up and everyone loves it, versus Rings of Power, which comes out contemporaneously with loads of money, huge budgets, all the publicity, everything you ever order from Amazon has an advert for Rings of Power, and it's fucking shit, and it deserves the failure that it got.
And a horse died.
And a horse died. If they're sensible, they will take a look at House of the Dragon and try and learn what it was that made that quite as popular as it became. But they're not sensible because they're Amazon. They have too much money.
That.
Well, I mean,
I think if you were suddenly put in charge of this show, coming into it with season 2, like after the reception of season 1, what could you potentially do to try and salvage this? Like, I feel like it's an unwinnable situation because the public perception of it is so negative. I don't know how you could redeem yourself in their eyes.
There are two ways you could. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Brown.
I was going to say, main way is to raise the subscription fee by £3 to pay for the series.
I'll do it.
That'll get
you could do that, yeah.
I think
it's
there's
Amazon. Amazon's not short on money.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about it, yeah.
You could do it 2 ways. You could do it, and I think this is what they have to do because they didn't scrap it and start over, so that option's gone. So they can either do, if they're going to do it well, they would need to do it lore accurate. So you move forward, and bearing in mind that the lore has already been trashed, but you kind of try to get it back on track and get it lore accurate, or you just take it off in its own direction and just it's its own thing now. We're not even going to try to keep it accurate to Tolkien's world. It's just its own series, and we're going to write it the way we want to write it. If I was an Amazon, that's the way I would do it, because I think Humpty Dumpty's broken and you're not going to put them back together again. I think that's how it is with lore. So I would just make it its own show completely and write on the basis of what is best.
I think they'd really struggle with that because season 1 already effectively did that. Season 1 has the problem of attempting, or it claims it sells itself on the basis that it is an adaptation of Tolkien's work, but really it's not. It breaks the law. It does already go off in its own direction, and there is no way of pulling that back, even as season 2 moves into areas where they have more of the rights to the backstory material. But I sometimes think that that's not as big a deal as people like you and I probably think that it is, because obviously, if you're a fan of Tolkien, lots of people on the internet, lots of YouTubers are big fans. We've read the books, we watched the films, we know all this stuff, we care about the lore, but we're not, I don't think, the majority of viewers or even potential viewers for a Rings of Power show. Rings of Power season 1 didn't fail because, or just because, it did such a terrible job as an adaptation. It failed because it was tedious and badly written on its own terms, so even people with no familiarity with the lore had no reason to stick around, as I think only about 30% of them did. It's a bad show for all of the reasons. The lore breaks are pretty egregious, absolutely, but it's just a bad show as well because they have no ability to write a coherent script, and the actors are terrible, and the dialogue's embarrassing. And even if you did take it off in its own direction with no regard to the law, that's not going to change unless you completely change the backroom team.
Well, I think the important thing is to establish a creative framework. So, for example, one of the reasons season 1 failed, whereas, for example, The Lord of the Rings by Jackson succeeded, is because everyone knew what they were supposed to be doing. With Jackson's Lord of the Rings, his mission statement was quite simple. We just want to make it as accurate to the book as is cinematically possible. And we want to, make it for Tolkien. That's a very clear mission statement. It's a very clear creative framework that everyone can understand. But Rings of Power is very confused. If you're involved in that production, you're not sure, is this supposed to be related to the books? Are we doing our own thing here? Everyone's kind of confused. And because there's no real creative framework there, you end up with just like an absolute mess. So for the writers, even down to the production and the costume designers, what exactly are they working off? I think before you do anything else, you first need to establish, are we working from the text here, or are we just doing our own thing? And everyone should know that so that they know exactly what they're supposed to do in the production.
I think even whether you're going to do your own thing or whether you're going to be slavishly devoted to the text as much as you can be, there's a general level of just basic quality that you would strive for, whether it's like something as simple as the costume design and actually making it seem like they're wearing real suits of armor, or the writing of the characters, giving them dialogue that real, like, believable humans or whatever would actually say, or giving you a plot that unfolds in a way that seems logically consistent and emotionally and dramatically satisfying. Those are all things that you can do regardless of whether or not you're going to stick to the lore. It's just a basic level of, like, quality, I suppose, and they don't even adhere to that.
And then they have the gumption to lead by saying, we're going to write the story that Tolkien never could. Yeah, that went well.
Yeah. And it just seemed natural that this show, which is about a fantasy world, thousands of years before our own existence, should reflect the world that we live in today. Of course it should, yeah. Because
But also it's kind of a prequel to the Jackson films, meaning that all the diverse cast have to at some point be genocided between the end of Rings of Power and the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring. Yeah, so, that'll be fun to watch if they ever get around to that.
I mean, the Harfoots would definitely do it because they fucking love killing people.
I would love to see the scene where the Harfoots just get wiped out. I would watch it just to see that.
But, like, they haven't created a show that people are invested in. They've created memes. That's all it is. It's like things that people like to hate on and mock because they're so dumb. That's what this show is. I mean, that's a hell of a legacy to leave behind you.
Where do you go from? I mean, does it have any compelling characters or likable characters that people would like to see on screen again that you could kind of use as a springboard into a better season 2?
I was fully on board with Halbrand. I want him to win.
I want to see Old Man Waldrick make some more landmarks in the Lord of the Rings universe.
He turns the key in the floor to unlock the dam to release the water that sets off Mount Doom. And just in case you missed it, they have the little sign in the top left corner. They renamed the town. It's now officially called Mordor.
You can go make Minas Morgul. You can go over there and turn a key.
I just want
one of his adventures.
I just want Galadriel just bragging about how she killed an ice troll in under 10 seconds. Just constantly going on about it. I mean,
it's set up for failure anyway, though, because it is still an adaptation. Even if you do, as season 1 unofficially did, but season 2 will also have to do, even if you do take it off in a completely random direction that barely corresponds with anything that anyone's ever read before, it is still supposed to be an adaptation. They did spend $1 billion trying to get the rights to the appendices of the books. And so they're using the character names, they're using the place names, they're using a number of recognizable things, which always would invite the comparison with the thing that they are adapting, or even the thing that they are spinning off from. If you look at Rings of Power and you say, well, what is Galadriel's character arc versus the arc that you get in her chapters of the Silmarillion, you're always going to look at unfavorably upon the adaptation because they've done such a terrible job by comparison. It's never going to live up to it. It's always going to be a memeable entity just for how shallow and cheap it is compared to the richness of the thing that they've tried to adapt.
Well, you're missing the point here, Platoon, because the real selling point of season 2 is that we're going to have all female directors for every episode.
Good. That will fix it.
That's a sure mark of quality when you just pick people based on their arbitrary characteristics they were born with rather than their actual talent or abilities. So, yeah, sure.
And do they all have Tempests in them as well? Or is that just reserved for Galadriel?
Only for 1 week per month do they have that Tempest in them.
You know, even if they do improve it, and I expect season 2 will be better than season 1, because it would be very difficult to make a season of television as bad as Rings of Power season 1 again. Just mathematically, that's unlikely.
Oh,
So
you
it's probably...
underestimate them, Despot.
I mean, if they've fired the showrunners who are very inexperienced, and like you said, a lot of the show being shit does come down to just bad writing. For example, Galadriel's a very poorly written character. Here's a very basic one. This is like 8 hours of TV, and it has one battle that doesn't really make sense, fought over some shit heap mud village that no one cares about. Like, that is astounding incompetence. How did that get greenlit? Like, you bring a script, a massive script, 8 hours long, into a studio executive, and he says, well, I see you've got a battle scene at the end of this. Yeah, let's greenlight that. Like, that's just, this is supposed to be like war fantasy. There should be a lot more war and action and battles in it than that. So from a very basic competence perspective, it's terrible. So of course season 2 is going to be better. It would have to be better, especially if they've hired new showrunners. But even if it is better, it's still just going to be mediocre and kind of shit. You can only improve this so much because the foundation is so rotten. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, how's that?
I think, honestly, like, I love your optimism and I hope you're right, but I think you'd be surprised by how much further they can sink in terms of like their actual creative output, the artistic merit of what they produce. And particularly when you bring new people into a show which is already up and running and you're committed to a course of action narratively, and you're stuck with the actors, essentially. They're not going to get any better at what they do. And you've got your all-female directing team. Like, none of these things are really recommending themselves to the idea that this is going to be an improvement on season 1. I think you're just going to see more of the same, really, if not worse.
There's more risk as well, because at least, well, I would imagine this is what they will do. This one will actually front and center Sauron a lot more than season 1 did, with a lot more agency. He will effectively be the mastermind. They cast his Anatar form, Anatar the Gift Giver, who looks a bit like tech support Sauron from the casting decision, but, you know, it was a choice. He's the one who is supposed to trick the elves into, or try to trick the elves and all of the free peoples into taking the Rings of Power, which, if they do follow that storyline, and they've cast the character, so I imagine they will, that means that he's effectively got to mastermind all of the nefarious operations behind the scenes. So they have to write a really competent villain. And I've got Admiral Thrawn flashbacks already. I'm sure they'll turn him into a character like that.
I'll never forgive this show particularly for something that had $1 billion spent on it, apparently, how cheap it makes everything seem, how cheap it makes everything look. Like the forging of the Rings of Power, this epic event in the history of Middle-earth, it made it look like it was done on a budget of like $100. It just looks so banal. It looks so small. It looks so uninteresting.
Was it $56 million per episode?
Yeah, but this is a world we live in where She-Hulk cost $25 million an episode. $25 million. It's incredible.
And somehow it failed.
I mean, wouldn't you know it? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just everything about the show just doesn't lend itself to the kind of epic storytelling that you would expect from Tolkien. The Peter Jackson movies nailed it. They gave you that. They gave you that sense of grandeur. They gave you that sense of the entire world is at stake with what we're doing here. This is like world-changing events that we're witnessing. I never felt like that when I was watching Rings of Power. It felt like I was watching a soap opera.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a... Go ahead.
Sorry, after you. Oh, after you.
Well, I was going to say, it did. It felt very small scale, dull, boring, and none of the events felt like they had any real weight or consequence to them. And then out of nowhere, a volcano explodes. And there's no real build up to that.
I'll always love that. It was just some random old guy with a sword who just triggered the volcano. Okay, sure.
Yeah, and that was another part of the bad writing. Like that wasn't properly set up. That's supposed to be a big payoff. And the reason it feels so abrupt is because it's not properly set up.
Yeah,
I think you would struggle to set that up in any way at all. I mean, the decision is such a bizarre one. How does Mordor get created? Yeah, old man floods volcano with key. I don't think there's a way you can do that sensibly. I just think that was a terrible decision. and all the setup in the world would have struggled to make that seem serious.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then the other problem on the scale question is a really interesting one, because that's another huge missed opportunity. If you consider that, this is supposed to be set back in, that's its second age, I think, is Rings of Power, or the equivalent of the second age. You get a snapshot of the grandeur and the might and the scale of the thing at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring. It's the great battle right at the start, which gives you a sense of how large these factions are and how well developed and how well armed and how big the battle and therefore the stakes are. The Rings of Power is set during a time when all of the factions are at their most powerful, in theory, at least. Certainly the elves are supposed to be at their most powerful and the most widespread. They have the biggest civilizations, they have the biggest armies, they have the most knowledge, they have all of this. The dwarves are mining into Moria, they're expanding their civilization, and the men are pottering about doing fairly impressive things as well. But I think that the largest group of people you see in one place is going to be the horse charge toward the end of the show, like 20 people on horseback going to fight about 50 orcs. And it gives you no sense of the grandeur of the world that you've built, if that's the scale you've got.
Poor horse who died.
Yeah.
Yeah, Numenor saying 500 men in this military expedition to the mainland, and it's so pathetic.
Yep.
And
you've got characters like Isildur, who are major figures in the history of Middle Earth, and you've turned him into like a skinny, metrosexual teenage boy. Like, is this what you want to show us? Is this character that is supposed to like change the fate of Middle Earth? Really? That's all he is? I know why they did it, of course. Like they want to deconstruct him and show him that like whatever he achieved was ultimately because of Guy Ladriel, like showing him the correct way to be a hero. But my God, it's demoralizing to see it happen.
And he shouldn't even be there for another, I think, the equivalent of 2,000 years. Isildur is born later. And so you can make a lot of lore complaints, and I do make a lot of lore complaints with Rings of Power. I understand, and will also make the criticism that it fails on terms which have nothing to do with its adaptation of the lore. But the lore complaints, I think, are relevant because when your world is so carefully constructed as Tolkien's world is, if you start changing bits willy-nilly, all of a sudden you find that further down the line, nothing you're adapting will make any more sense because you've broken the causal links and the chains that are supposed to create even something as simple as why is this tower where it happens to be? Chances are there's a story about that somewhere further back in the Silmarillion. And if you don't have that story, then the tower just randomly exists, as one example. You need to actually have a mind to world building, which is at least a half as competent as Tolkien's to get close to creating this cohesive world. And the Rings of Power showrunners are very far short of having half at the level of competence of a Tolkien.
Well, I think one thing we can all guarantee is when the trailer does finally come out, well, we'll be watching with interest.
Oh, yes.
Is this the worst TV program ever made? Because I know you guys are into it.
It's not the worst, but like again, it's in terms of relative destruction to like a beloved franchise that I guess you'd have to judge it by. Yeah, it's pretty fucking bad.
Essentially, it's the bad reboot producers behind the first series, wasn't it? They're all bad robot. J.J. Abrams.
I think so. Weren't the two showrunners, they had an uncredited role on the is it Star Trek Beyond, the awful one? I say one of the awful ones. Yeah. So they are, they're all in some way connected to that shit show.
That's why there's so many mystery boxes in it. Bad Reboot loves their mystery boxes.
That's all they've been taught to do.
It's genuinely, well, one, impressive, but two, like, just baffling that like these guys who have almost no experience with this kind of thing are suddenly put in charge of like one of the most important shows of the current
and Lindsay Weber TV. Apparently.
Lindsay Weber, how did you get to this point? Like, there must be other people who were more qualified than this.
I would have thought it was because
who you know, Will. You know that.
What's that?
It's who you know.
I mean, it could well be, yeah. It could be
nepotism, that who you know. It's not on talent. It's who you know. Like with most things, it's who you know. Being in the right place at the right time.
It could be that the studio wanted people who were inexperienced and therefore pliable, and they would just do what the studio demanded.
Perhaps they thought they couldn't fail.
Jennifer Salke obviously had a vision for it, and there were a lot of things that she wanted to see there, so she didn't want to bring in like she didn't want a George R.R. Martin showing up with all these big ideas, who's going to be very stubborn and insist that his creative vision be adhered to. She wanted, obviously, someone who was pliable, and it's astonishing that my God, man, like the Jennifer Salkes and Kathleen Kennedys of the world that can get away with these billion-dollar fuck-ups and still not get fired. It is astonishing.
It's amazing.
It's impressive, yeah. It must be great to be a female executive in Hollywood. You can fuck up as many times as you want and have zero career repercussions.
And still complain about being oppressed by the patriarchy.
Well, didn't work out for good old Patty Jenkins, though, did it?
Not her. It's worked okay for Kathleen Kennedy so far. It's worked pretty well for Greta Gerwig. I mean, she hasn't had the box office failures, but yeah, you can still complain about being oppressed even when you're making millions of dollars. Sure. But should we do a few super chats?
Yes.
Since we're all here, we're still conscious right now, and there's questions waiting to be answered. They've been certainly piling up while we've been doing this. So, first one is from Canada Plus, who says, "Hail to the panel. Who would win in a fight? Guy Ladriel versus every character that Margot Robbie has ever played." So, the main one is going to be Harley Quinn, isn't it? Harley Quinn versus Galadriel. My money's on Galadriel.
Well, they won't let Harley Quinn die.
Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, but she isn't really a fighter, really. I guess if you're talking in terms of her combat abilities, probably Harley Quinn's the best one that she's done. Barbie's not really a fighter.
Galadriel has it.
Yeah,
I think so. If she can take on an ice troll and kill it within 10 seconds, then she can take on
under 10 seconds. Under 10 seconds.
He also says, any excitement for the Razzies, the worst movie awards?
And the Marvels got snubbed.
What?
Oh.
Yeah, the Marvels didn't get nominated in a single category.
Is that because it was so shit even the Razzies wouldn't touch it?
It's
I'm
outrageous,
intrigued now.
man.
What did they choose instead of the Marvels? I know there's been a lot of shit, like Indiana Jones and stuff, but the Marvels is up there.
Expendables.
Expendables was in there.
Oh god, yeah, that was shit.
Oh, Shazam got it there.
All right, I've got it. So they've got the Exorcist Believer, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, Shazam, Fury of the Gods.
Shazam.
Of all the superhero movies, Expendables and Meg 2: The Trench. So that's their.
I think they put Shazam in there because it's like the least controversial one to put in there. Like nobody cares.
Yeah,
about
they
it.
wanted a superhero movie in there.
I never watched that and thought, oh my god, the performances are terrible here. It was more just like, the movie's just forgettable.
Well, it was pretty bad plot wise, but in terms of the selection we had, I think the Flash should be in there before that.
Ant-Man 3 surely was worse.
It's funny when you mentioned like Indiana Jones, because I legit forget that movie even happened. Honestly, it made so little impression on me. I forget that I even saw it.
Worst actor, you got Russell Crowe, the Pope's Exorcist.
No,
he was quite good in that. He was actually my favorite part of that.
He seemed like he was having a lot of fun with it. Elsie Le Pen says, "Hail open bar. The Oscars are indeed a dumpster fire, but what were some of the best moments in its past? Mine was Robin Williams getting one for Good Will Hunting, knowing how much it meant to him."
Oh, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt that, but they have a different category that has all the things you guys were mentioning.
Oh, good.
So worst prequel, remake, ripoff, or sequel. You got Ant-Man and the Wasp, and Indiana Jones is in there as well.
Nice.
Okay.
And they've called it Indiana Jones the Dial of Still Beating a Dead Horse.
Yeah, fair enough.
So yeah, fair enough.
Good that they've got it covered. But yeah, so best or favorite Oscar moments of the past. I will say, I'm trying to remember the actor's name.
I've slept since then.
So yeah, when Roberto Benigni won for Life is Beautiful, he won Best Actor. He walked over the seats to get to the stage. Like he didn't go down the aisle or anything. He just walked right over everyone because like such was his enthusiasm, and I just thought that was fucking brilliant. I loved his just like sheer energy for it. Yeah, that's probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I don't really watch the Oscars. I just catch the highlights. And then I can't remember which year the highlights are from, if I remember them.
With the slap right there.
The slap was definitely something that everyone saw, I think.
Elsie Le Pen says, also, Drinker, love the Rogue Elements screenshots that you've been sharing so far. Happy that I backed it and can't wait to watch. Wondering which YouTubers will try to review it, though. Wow, who knows? But yeah, I'm glad you've enjoyed the little bits and pieces that I've been sharing. Yeah, we're getting pretty close to release.
Are you able to give us any news, any snippets?
The trailer's almost ready. The final edit of the movie is almost ready. Wow. Like, basically, they're going to send their first cut to me, then I can give my suggestions, and then we'll re-edit it a little bit potentially.
How do you feel about the whole experience?
It's been great because I got to see all the fun bits and like watching it filmed and stuff, and then drink quite a bit while I was out in Canada, and then come home and then leave other people to do all the boring bits like the editing, the sound mixing, the soundtrack, the visual effects, and that just goes to other people. So
how long was the shoot?
It was about 2 weeks in total. So pretty short. Like you got like 3 takes for each scene. They had to move very, very quickly. But yeah, that's I guess what you have to do when you're a relatively small budget. But like they got everything they needed, and it's come together pretty well. So pretty happy. So yeah, I'm looking forward to releasing it to the world so people can have a look, have a laugh, and then mock it or whatever as they go.
Are you able to tell us the duration?
It's about 40 minutes.
Wow,
nice. It's between 40 and 45. So it's not
pilot
movie length. Yeah. It's
kind
of like
expectations.
Yeah. There was some discussions in the initial stages of like, we could almost do this as a feature-length film, and we realized pretty quickly, no, you can either get a pretty decent short film or you can get a really shit feature-length one where we're like totally stretched beyond our abilities. So
are you going to go around and try and sell the sell the episode to make a series?
I'm not.
What is the end? What is the end game? What is the end game?
Well, I mean, the idea being, I suppose, that you can go to streamers and production studios and stuff and say, like, this is what we were able to do for a minuscule budget. Like, look at this as almost like a pilot for a TV show. Would you be interested in investing? Maybe we can do something.
Because Reach is doing really well at the moment.
It is, yeah. So there's discussions underway. I can say that much.
Top men.
I think you may have. I think the timing may be spot on.
Top men are working on this. Yeah.
Excellent.
Don Blackbird says, to hell with all the modern day nonsense, gents. What are your favorite Guy Ritchie movies and characters? I watched Snatch today and I thought maybe Vinnie Jones would have been a cool Doctor Who. That's a matchup I never would have expected, but yeah. Okay.
I like the Sherlock movies.
They're pretty good.
Fair.
Yeah.
They're fun.
I thought they were a lot of fun.
Snatch would be my number one from him, but I quite like that handful.
Lock, Stock is pretty good. And The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I very much enjoyed.
That was okay.
Snatch from me. Snatch is a great movie.
Isn't there a TV show for The Gentleman coming up?
Yeah, the Gentleman movie was pretty good. Yeah, and there is a series coming out, yeah.
I think is he connected to it, at least somewhat?
Producing,
probably, yeah.
Did you guys watch The Covenant at all?
No.
That was an odd one. It felt very, very un-Guy Ritchie-ish. But it was a decent enough movie in its own right. It didn't feel like it was in his wheelhouse at all, and I was kind of curious why he directed it, but...
You mean like Aladdin?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck was that, Guy?
Did Guy Ritchie direct the Aladdin remake?
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
It's such a wacky... Like, I never found that out. I was like, how did that even happen? Yeah, man, he's perfect for Aladdin.
Sure. Waylon Bicephus says Timothy Chalamet
here we
and
go.
Kylie Jenner broke up. When asked why, Jenner said, because he's Timothy Chalamet and I'm Kylie Jenner. I mean, yeah, good reason, I suppose. Piston says, what movie did you watch when you were young that wasn't well known but that you love to bits? Mine is Asterix and Obelix versus Caesar from 1999. So obscure movies or whatever that weren't well known but you loved them.
Nuns on the Run, Robbie Coltrane. It's a good one.
Nuns on the Run.
Mine was Battle Beyond the Stars. I fucking loved that movie as a kid. Didn't really appreciate how much of a rip-off it was, but I didn't care. And it had Sybil Danning with, wow, I don't know. Like, you should look up her outfits from that movie. They were epic.
Yes.
That would be my choice. Don't know about the rest of you guys.
Struggling to think of any. As a young kid, I really, really loved the 1998 Godzilla film. Now I'm older and I know better.
Oh, no.
But I really liked it when I was like 3. It was great.
God, I feel old.
Not so much now. All right. Chucksenhausen says, Drinker, I'm excited for your Reacher review. So, yeah, everyone's like mad for me to watch like Reacher season 2. So I'm like 1 or 2 episodes in right now. It feels very much like, I don't know if they changed writing teams or something on this one. It feels like someone trying to emulate the dialogue of Reacher rather than it being like authentic like the first season was. You know, the characters are either making insane leaps of logic that like no normal person could ever make, or they're like spelling out things that are painfully obvious, but they just want to say it because it makes them seem like a bit more intelligent. It's a weird, setup that they have now. It's nowhere near as smart as the first film or the first season. I don't know. Yeah, maybe it changes as it goes, but it's definitely a step down in terms of writing quality.
Scathing.
Sorry. Yeah, maybe it's going to pick up. I don't know. Ian so forth gifted 10 critical drinker membership. So thank you very much, sir. Michael Brocky says, hail to the panel, my first super chat ever. Thank you all for the amazing content. I raise a glass to you, Drinker, MauLer, and Platoon. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you.
And
I can actually raise a glass. Cheers. Look, I'm raising a glass back. It actually works.
Look at him go.
Woo! Can you? No, that's the question.
No, I can't drink it. It's tragic.
I will raise a glass to Mr. Brown as well. Sorry, it wasn't included in that message.
Cheers. Good health.
M8566 says, I had a dream a while back that MauLer had a big meetup for his birthday. He only took his mask off to eat.
Didn't have like a straw system.
What about drinking?
That's just plugged directly in.
Yeah. You do have a hole like in the nose sort of part, so maybe you could snort alcohol.
A reverse catheter.
Yeah. He also says, oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Drinker. Oh, no. I was going to say, in Avatar 2, there's a kid who has a mask and he runs around with that Na'vi. And I was watching the movie thinking, how does he eat? Because if he takes his mask off, he suffocates. But he spends lots of time with the Na'vi.
It is correct, although it's far from the biggest problem with that film, but you are right.
I think you've got a few seconds as well. Like, once you take the mask off, you're not going to die instantly. You could get a few bites down and then choke a little bit.
Maybe,
yeah. Just an existence of endless torment and agony, I think, is what he lives. He also says, Gerwig and Robbie getting snubbed at the Oscars is appalling and sexist. Clearly, the Academy needs to introduce more diversity quotas. I agree 100%.
Bigots.
Wasn't a problem for Women Talking. Women Talking, 100% white, got 220 nominations across many. It actually won. It beat Top Gun Maverick for adapted screenplay. 100% white.
But it was 100% female as well. So
does that count?
Be good.
Auto-diverse. Yeah.
It's like semi-diverse. Like, you know,
they're not very high on the list, but they are on the list.
Yeah, ideally you want black women, but like if you can get white women, it's like it's okay, I guess. It's like it's
not terrible.
Yeah. Mr. Luca says, hey, MauLer, what's your Ilsa criticism again?
Oh, for Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, that she deserved a hell of a lot more respect than barely any scenes, barely any dialogue, and then getting killed off. She also is like idiotic with her approach and fight with Mr. AI boss man, and then she gets sidelined for a new heroine for some reason. I don't know why they've done that, other than the fact that they didn't have Rebecca Ferguson for long. I assume because she was doing Dune or Silo or whatever.
Is it because she was pregnant? Well,
Maybe that too. In any case, obviously the story has suffered greatly for it.
I wonder, is it a combination of like her being pregnant and they were under like a lot of COVID lockdown restrictions while they were filming this? Or is it just like we can't really get her into this movie in a meaningful way?
Like I said, I thought maybe it was Dune that got in the way.
It might have been, yeah.
Because if you're going to pick one or the other, I guess she picked right.
Yeah. So we're going to come down to Dune 2, really, isn't it? Like
it's funny. I said all this to Az, and he was like, "She's not dead. She's coming back. She's coming back." I was like, "All right."
It's not the Fast and the Furious.
We'll see.
Normie, yeah, it says, does anyone really think that Rings of Power gets 5 seasons? I honestly don't know a soul who watches it. Also, the Barbie controversy goes to show that no matter what you do or give to certain people, it's never going to be enough. I mean, that's definitely true, yeah.
Chateau said we will get 5 seasons because it's cheaper to make it than to buy everybody out.
It's also, yes, a contractual obligation to produce a certain amount on a certain schedule. Whether or not, well, it depends, because if it gets to the point where absolutely no one is watching it and each season is going to cost hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, it might get to the point where it is cheaper to forego the rest of whatever the contractual obligation is. I would be surprised if we got all 5. Yeah. I kind of hope we do, just because it gives me content, but that's the only reason I'm happy.
£3 no ads will become £6 no ads.
That'd be so bizarre, won't it? Though, I mean, let's say season 2 comes out and it's as bad as Drinker and Platoon expect it to be, and I expect it to be bad, maybe just not quite as pessimistic as you. But then no one watches it and it's a big fail, and the last third of the audience drops off. But they have to keep making these seasons of television for no one. It'd be bizarre. Like for this, they keep having to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on the show that no one is watching.
Yeah, but you're assuming that like every episode, every season is going to be like 8 or 10 episodes. It might just be 2.
Oh, yeah, I suppose that's true.
Cut down the cost,
What did Jeff Bezos' son say to him?
Oh, his son. So the launch announcement when Jeff Bezos was actually trading the whole thing. And he said, "My son's a really big fan of Tolkien. He's basically a Tolkien scholar." And he turned to me and he said, "Dad, don't fuck this up." And then Jeff Bezos went and fucked it up. So
hold my beer, son.
Yeah.
Yeah. Robbo96 says the trailer for the Roadhouse remake kicks ass. Does exactly what it says on the tin, which is refreshing.
Mr. Bryan, you have thoughts?
Did you see the tweet, the article today? Doug Linehan said he was promised it was going to be a theatrical release, and Amazon have gone, so he's going to refuse to promote it. That's the director.
Oh, I saw that he's boycotting the premiere, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think.
It's a bit of a downgrade, really, going from theatrical to like streaming. And when you've got Jake Gyllenhaal on board as well, it's a pretty big star.
Did they need to make it though? The first
one
with
what
Swayze
a pointless question.
Such a guilty pleasure. It's great.
It's because the thing is, like, it was unashamedly just like a big ballsy 80s
cheesy
action thriller. Yeah, cheesy, like over the top and silly.
Yeah.
And like you could enjoy it on that basis. This one is trying to be self-aware and it's trying to be fun, and it like pokes fun at itself. And like, I don't think that's the road you want to go down with this. Yeah, man, it seems like an unnecessary remake. It doesn't deconstruct the the main character for what it is, but
somebody said Irish steakhouse.
Yeah, I love the fact that the Roadhouse is now owned by a strong, empowered black woman, because of course it is. It's what you'd expect, but I don't know, man. The trailer didn't look horrible. It's just a fairly generic action fighty. Yeah. we will see, I suppose. Kaylee Fall says, ISS is a nerve-wracking movie, but I loved it. What's ISS?
It's a space station, international space station. I think it's kind of is it a horror film? Horror sci-fi?
But is that what they're going for with this?
Yeah, I think ISS is international space station. I think it is.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Because I was thinking about that horror movie. Is it Life? It's called.
Yeah.
Set aboard the ISS. It's got Ryan Reynolds in it.
What do you think of that?
Essentially, it's the same thing.
It was just stupid.
Yeah.
It's a stupid horror movie.
Yeah.
Dan Ronan says, "Hail gents, any of you see the trailer for the Shogun remake? Love the old miniseries and currently reading the book. What do you think? Anyone seen the Shogun trailer?
Nope.
All right. Sorry, man. Master of Puppets says, hello, was there a female superhero the panel would have liked to have seen on the big screen? Assuming she was well written and acted, of course. Yeah. I feel like we've had all of them. Everyone.
Sorry, were they asking specifically a girl or a guy or any?
No, a female superhero that's like from the comics that we either haven't seen on screen or they haven't done her justice. I mean, might be nice to see a really amazing adaptation of Captain Marvel that was actually good.
She-Hulk, right? Like everyone told me that the She-Hulk from the comics is way fucking better than the way they described her. I was like, yeah, she sounds like fun. So that one, not the one they gave us.
And he also said, what's this? Drinker, what news on your movie? Yeah, so as I was saying there, we are pretty much done with it. We'll have a trailer out pretty soon. And I've been sharing little behind the scenes pictures and stuff on my Patreon. I've shared some of my behind the scenes footage that I recorded when I was on set and various other things. So go check that out if you're interested.
Are you going to try and show it in a theater?
We'll probably do some premieres or some evenings with, and it's like either over here or in the States where, we'll show the film in a theater and then I'll be there for a Q&A and we'll have a bit of fun. I'll be drunk and you can just ask me questions about the film. And I'll probably try and get the director and maybe some of the actors in as well. So, but yeah, it's not going to be in 1,000 theaters or something stupid like that. It's just going to be select venues, I suppose, for a bit of a laugh. But yeah, I want everyone to be able to see it, so I'll just put it on my YouTube channel as well. Here we go. Waylon Bicephus says, and this is the ultimate question for all of us: Asperger's or math debate? Which would you have to pick?
I can just fail the math debate, right?
I mean, can you fail at that? Really? When you're math debating? I mean, I suppose potentially you could fail. You just don't achieve your objective.
I'll just say 5, no matter what.
Yeah.
I might even be right at some point.
Okay. TGV Monster says, pretty sure Disney's going to have to resort to Blumhouse's way of taking $100 million and making $101 million movies. And to be fair, it works. Yeah, I mean, if I had to choose, it's probably what I would do. Some of them are going to succeed, inevitably. And
originality really isn't in Disney's business model, though.
No, that's why you have studios like Blumhouse, I guess, who just are willing to experiment a little bit with stuff like this, and I don't know, take risks because they don't invest a huge amount into each individual movie, but inevitably some of them are going to be good. Taker 610 says, Drinker, if you had to summon some of your ancestors to help in a fight, would they be useful or would they just show up belligerent and drunk? Fuck off, I'm busy. Yeah, probably belligerent and drunk, but they would try and fight as well, but they wouldn't be very good. So
Would they inhabit the body of like an 80-year-old relative to take out the bad guys around you?
I think so, yeah. And I would do like a pose where like me and all my ancestors are just lined up with each other, and we'd all be wearing kilts and like,
Drinker,
scruffy
speaking of poses, I think you should show your attire off again. The peeps in the chat are wanting to see your attire.
Do you want to see it? Shall I show you?
Yeah, go on.
Hold on. While we're on the topic of Echo, I have a question for Little Platoon.
Right, there's my
Look at
kilt.
that.
So I can't go any further back because I'm tethered to my headphones.
Look at that.
There you go. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway.
I wanted to briefly ask Little Platoon, have you seen any, like, do you think Echo is the worst thing Marvel have done? Have you seen it?
No. Yeah, no, I've seen it. Somehow I'm still doing a video on it because I started the script and the sunk cost fallacy hasn't really sunk in, so I'm still doing it. But it'll come out eventually. But it's far from the worst thing they've done. It's just nothing happens. It's boring. It's tedious. We don't understand anything about the character going into it, and we know virtually nothing about it coming out. And it's supposed to be the spotlight premise is it's a grounded, character-led story, and you don't have to have seen anything else to understand it, except that, of course, you do. And it's not grounded or character-led by the end because you have suddenly ancestors who come in and just give her magical powers, which is shit, but it's far from the worst thing they've ever done.
Is it She-Hulk then, or Secret Invasion?
It's more Secret Invasion than She-Hulk, I think. I mean, She-Hulk is comically bad in all of the ways, and Echo is just so tedious.
Yeah, get behind that. Angry Batman says, Hail, everyone should watch Primal. It has more character development in 10 minutes than most modern movies. No dialogue, a caveman, a T-Rex, brutal fights, and genuinely touching stories. Got to bury a body now. Wait, what? Primal, yeah, so apparently it's good.
The chat are asking what's your tartan?
This, and it's not related to like me or anything, but this is the McGregor hunting tartan, I believe. So yeah, it was pretty much one that I picked out when I was getting a kill. But like, yeah, this is like when I went and got it. It was like from a sort of rental store, and they had like ones that you could rent, ones that you could buy. And like when you don't have a clan tartan of your own, you just have to kind of pick one out. And I picked this because it looked nice, so that was it. Nothing too specific with it. Alcatraz says, "Morning, gents. Pano, a Predator movie idea for you. It's set during the Vietnam War. It can go really psychologically scary with it. What are your thoughts?"
I'm
Predator
in.
Vietnam, sure. Okay.
It could be. I mean, it would cross over a little bit with the time and setting of the original Predator, I think. I'd quite like to see other divergent Predator films which explore bits of history that we haven't had in Predator yet. Like Predator versus Samurai could be fun. Not counting that one bit in that one film where he does fight the Ronin guy. But otherwise, there are plenty of, like, Predator versus Vikings. Speaking of drunk, belligerent people who are also good fighters. That could be fun.
Yep. I mean, you established with Prey that, like, okay, you can have the Predator versus like people with primitive weapon because it seems to tailor its loadout to the kind of people it's fighting. So, okay.
Predator v. William Wallace?
Like just an entire army.
Predator versus Virus Legions, and we discovered that it wasn't the Germans that destroyed Virus Legions.
I think you could do something interesting like Predator in World War One, where you got like a squad that gets like separated from their troops in the trench warfare, and they get hunted by a predator. You know, like with the poison gas and the fog and the smoke. Like I think you could do something kind of interesting there.
Like Stalingrad, you could have Predator versus communists. That would be fun.
I love it.
I'd be rooting for the Predator there. Kill them all. Anyway, Shan Wickrasing says, to answer your last order's question about how old water is, I saw a Vsauce video which said that 30 to 50% of the water is older than our sun, and the sun is 4.5 billion years old. Yeah, MauLer and I theorized that since like water on our planet essentially goes in a cycle, you know, evaporates, goes up into the sky, it rains back down on us. Is the water that we drink or swim in the ocean, is that the same water that the dinosaurs experience. So if you have a glass of water, did it one day get pissed out by a T-Rex? And there you are drinking it now, laughing your ass off. Apparently, yes.
Yes.
So we're drinking dinosaur piss.
I think we are, yeah. And we should all feel honored by that. So next time you pour some water out of your tap, just think, a T-Rex probably pissed this out one day. Nice. He also says, sharks are older than trees, grasshoppers are older than grass, and whales are descended from deer. Go home, evolution, you're drunk. I hope all of that's true, actually. That's fantastic. Mr. Lucas says, thoughts on Conor McGregor's acting? Yeah. It's a bit like Tony Bellew in like Creed. You know, you could either have fighters that can act or actors that can not fight. So, yeah, they made their choice here. I don't imagine Conor McGregor's required to do much except just be a big, intimidating guy with a beard.
What was he casting?
Roadhouse.
Oh, right, okay.
So he's like the muscle that's that's got to be taken down, and like he's very much just there to do the fighting and shout a little bit. So
yeah, hopefully he doesn't have any lines.
He does have a few, but I imagine it plays to his strength. It's like just a big angry guy with a beard and big muscles who's going to do some fighting. So probably all that they're going to demand.
Just like your assessments, I'm afraid he does have a few lines.
Yeah.
Oh.
Random Stuff says, Disney is threatened by indie animation. I recommend The Amazing Digital Circus, free to watch on YouTube and better than any recent Disney shit. There you go. Amazing Digital Circus. Samson the Mighty says, Drinker and Panel, why do I have a feeling that all of this wokeness and agenda pushing is being done by a gay or lesbian version of Palpatine and now has the power to force messages down our throats? I mean, who knows?
Gay Palpatine.
Gay Palpatine is quite a funny one. I like that.
Faber Soul says, Hi Drinker, what kind of tone and direction should the new DCU have in order to succeed? If you were in charge, which direction would you go? Well...
Stop it.
Yeah, I would go in the direction of redundancy, but yeah, I'd probably go the more serious route, I guess, because at this point, trying to be a cheap carbon copy of Marvel is just going to make you look pathetic. Yeah, I wouldn't go the Zack Snyder route where everyone looks like they're dying of cancer, but at least just try and have something that's a bit more serious and a bit more grounded, if that's even possible with superhero movies. Yeah, try and do your own thing. Try and give it its own unique tone and feel. Yeah, that's the best I could say at this point. Like,
DC was there for the taking. DC was there for the taking. A more adult, grown-up superhero stuff. When we were enjoying all the Marvel stuff, and they just blew it. They just tried to copy Marvel.
Well, they tried to fast forward through development as well. I mean, that was never going to work, and Snyder's vision is very, very limited shelf life. But I think the Gunn versus DCU stuff is probably going to be the last gasp of the superhero thing. If it works, there is a gap in the market theoretically. Now Marvel is declining, and if he can capture it, he's got the recognizable characters that Marvel has killed off. It's not impossible, and then maybe you see a second wind. But if it doesn't, I think that's probably it for superheroes for the foreseeable future.
I'd agree.
Not even Superman's going to save it.
DC's like big struggle was they were just reacting to Marvel all the time. They were like, we're going to be the serious guys. And then they were like, okay, we need some comedy because that's what Marvel does. We got to go.
Well, it's like, we're going to be the serious ones. And then they realized like, okay, the serious version that we're trying to do isn't working. What can we do now? We're just like, Marvel are making loads of money. Why don't we just copy them? Okay,
it's
sure.
Like Suicide Squad and Justice League both got like hyper injections of comedy, didn't they? When
yes,
you got the additional cuts and stuff. Yeah, and then you had Aquaman was just a fucking goofy film to begin with, and Shazam was like wholesome. There was that era where they were like, okay, fine, we'll do the Marvel thing. And then you have the people wanted the Snyder cut, which is one of the more dour entries again. It's just like, where the fuck are we going? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, they had a whole bunch of things that they threw against the wall, like Wonder Woman, like big hit, like everyone liked that. You tried to follow up with another movie, it was absolute disaster. Like nothing they did had any staying power, I suppose. There was no reliable course of action that really recommended itself. It was just random things that happened to be successful. Jamaican Bacon says, "Hey Drinker, in your recent Why Movies Suck video, you highlighted the antagonist saturation with something like Agent Smith, but with Aliens and Starship Troopers, the threat increased with the enemy count. Compare, please." Okay, I can do that really easily. Agent Smith is a character, whereas like the aliens or the bugs from Starship Troopers are just a force of nature. They're just like a swarm of enemy antagonists. They're not characters. You know, like, none of the characters in Aliens had meaningful interaction with the aliens beyond "I want to eat you." So like it doesn't work in the same way.
The villain in Starship Troopers is the regime that controls a large part of Earth or all of Earth. I'm not sure about the lore. And the aliens or the arachnids aren't the villain. They're just kind of a monster stand-in, but really they're are they the good guys? Who knows?
I'll have you know, Despot of Antrim, that's a hot take. I'm curious if chat are gonna eat you up in a second.
The humans are the bad guys.
Yeah.
The only good bug is a dead bug.
I mean, you've heard the theory that it was actually the regime that destroyed Buenos Aires to justify the war. It was a false flag attack.
Some pretty damaging theories with proof.
I could definitely get behind that theory.
Great
But
movie.
yeah, like that's my justification. Like those things that are cited there, the aliens or the arachnids, they're not characters. They are just like, I don't know what you describe them as. They're just like an enemy force.
Cannon fodder.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, and Drinker, correct me if I'm wrong, but you added a whole bunch of additional aspects that ruin, like Kang, for example, just like he's been pathetic in every instance. If maybe he were threatening in every instance, we could try and make it work better. Agent Smith, it gets weird and Reloaded when you're like, why is Neo fighting like 1,000 of these guys? What does this mean exactly? And it's like, not actually sure. And then like another random agent shows up, like, what are you doing, Agent Smith? And Agent Smith like, pops his hand at him and it gets him with the goo. And you're like, what?
It's
Rewrite.
kind of
I think
interesting
they
concept
recognized
having the humanized
recognized-
virus kind of thing, but which is interesting as far as it goes. It's just that the Matrix films kind of failed to account for like individuated consciousness via like infinitely repeatable virus mechanics. So the concept was there, the concept was interesting, but by virtue of making him a character, you have to try and marry, which is very difficult to do, the human evil with the natural evil, and the Matrix films failed to do that. And to go back to Drinker's point, the three or the tripartite distinction between evil types: you have human evil, you have natural evil, and you have preternatural evil. And it's very, very difficult to blur any of those boundaries. But what works with one, natural evil, like say the Velociraptors in Jurassic Park, or the aliens in Aliens, that works in entirely different ways from human evil, which requires consciousness, act, will, motive. And again, that's entirely different from preternatural evil in the form of, say, like a Sauron character, which is just the embodiment of dark force. And you can't really blur those distinctions.
I think they recognized the problem they created for themselves, because like in the third movie, that's when you get like the Agent Smiths assimilate the Oracle, and that Smith then becomes like the definitive Agent
King
Smith that like has to be the one that fights Neo. He's like almost the one that represents the rest of them, because they recognize you need to have your antagonist personified into one physical body that we can either root against or root for. And so like that's how they got around it. But it's like that's the inherent problem of just replicating an enemy. It doesn't make them more threatening, it just dilutes them.
Did they even actually explain why just assimilating the Oracle didn't confer the same powers and knowledge on all of them? Because the second Matrix film is shared consciousness, so every Agent Smith is the Agent Smith. So in the third one,
it's what Drinker said. They literally just were like, we need one to be,
It's like we need one that's more powerful, more prescient than the rest. And like I think they were almost implying she was so unique that some of her traits carried over to the Smith that assimilated her. I guess.
I mean, like Neo walks past like 1,000 Smiths to fight them, and it's just like, are there any of those Smiths relevant? It's like, no,
it's fine. Not anymore.
They just stand there and watch. This one Good question. Samson the Mighty says, "Hey everyone, if you had to choose 3 weapons from movies and games, any movie or any game, which would they be? 1 weapon for short range, medium, and long range."
Hmm.
I mean,
I
can
always
start
loved
if you want.
the cerebral bore for Turok 2. Love that weapon. So much fun. You fire it, and this little kind of boring ball, boring as in it bores into the head. It flies out of the gun. It flies around a little bit. Then it enters the enemy's head and drills in and blows up. It's great.
Anything from Halo, really. I think Halo had most of it covered for different types of weapons.
What's our goal with these things? Like just as collectibles or to fight a war?
Destroy
Either,
Hollywood.
What you think would be particularly useful or effective, or just cool as fuck?
Halo 1 shotgun.
I can suggest a few. So for short range, I would go for the samurai sword from Highlander, the one that belonged to Ramirez and then got inherited by Connor. For medium range, I'd go for a pulse rifle from Aliens because that gun is just fantastic. And then for long range,
I'll have a Death Star.
yeah, sure. Just go with that. Yeah, that'll be fine. A lightsaber would be a pretty strong contender for
A pre-Disney lightsaber. Ones that actually kill people.
Yes.
Yeah, and I suppose in terms of power, post-Disney Death Star, because then we get the 6-planet killer.
Yeah, you can wipe out an entire system all at once.
Yeah. Shan Wickrasing says, 1 for the little platoon. Have you ever thought of upgrading to a larger company? So go up from platoon to company or even regiment. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe one day. I'll see. If I think I'm worth promoting, then maybe I will promote myself and then gain more people. For now, the little platoon is fine for me.
Waylon Bicephus says, what has 2 legs and bleeds? Half a dog. That's brutal. Jamaican Bacon says, can't wait to see you guys in Orlando. Do you accept gifts at your booth? No pressure, of course, but as an act of gratitude for all you do, thanks. I mean, I accept gifts if I can drink them, and I'll force the person who gives it to me to drink them as well. So, yeah, be warned. But yeah, come and see me. I'm going to be at MegaCon Orlando, and that's going to be next weekend. So, damn, it's coming on pretty fast. So, look forward to that. RRTNZ says, hail drinker and panel, congratulations Mr. Brown on your first appearance on Open Bar. Chuck Norris never cheats death, he always wins fair and square. That is true. Shan Wickrish Singh says, just testing to see if a super chat posted at 6 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time makes the live stream or goes to the last orders instead. Well, there you go, now you know. It made it into the live stream. Chernobog says, are you alkies seeing Louder Milk? Show about an asshole AA counselor. Just finished season 1 and I highly recommend it. See you at MegaCon Drinker. Wish that the long man was going also, but want him to sign my long. Cheers all.
Louder Milk?
Yeah. Louder Milk.
Okay. Yeah,
never heard of it.
It's a
Chat,
Sam Loudermilk
please.
is a recovering alcoholic and substance abuse counselor with a bad attitude. Okay. Ron Livingston.
Platform is it on?
Guy. I don't know.
Andrew McCarthy says, why did they gender bend Dr. Kynes for Dune? Because quotas, I guess.
Yeah, maybe she was the best lass for the job.
I mean, it's 2021, don't you know? And it's about time women took control of Arrakis.
What's kind of funny is that the only other thing I know that actress from is fucking Doctor Who. She was in like the Waters of Mars episode. I remember thinking like, what the fuck are you doing in Dune? But you know, hey, good for you, I guess.
I think Dune is getting re-released for a few days in the UK in February as the warm-up.
Did anybody here love Dune? Like Danny Villeneuve's Dune? I mean, I
liked
liked it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I liked it a lot.
Didn't love it. I appreciate that it's a well-made movie and cinematography is fantastic. It's an interesting film. I didn't really feel compelled to rewatch it necessarily.
I will rewatch it. I've rewatched it a few times for those reasons. It is a well-made film. It's beautiful to look at. And you can tell a lot of thought and attention has gone into it, and there's a lot of being set up, which I'm hoping will be paid off in the second film, so that will hopefully make it more interesting. But it's a hard film to love in the way that the inevitable comparison is going to be Star Wars, right? It's a much harder film to love than Star Wars because it's not quite such a strong character-driven story, and it's much more thematically complex and politically complex as well. It's much more high sci-fi as opposed to Star Wars. So yeah, it's an intriguing proposition more than a real sort of.
Is
affection.
Zendaya going to ruin number 2?
I thought Zendaya was quite good in number 1, but
She was
Yeah,
fine.
we
but,
saw her
like,
for about
they-
2
they-
seconds.
Yeah, they
Is she
really
gonna-
kept her tone down as much as possible in the first
is
one.
she going to take over the franchise because she's the female counterpart
Worried.
and she has
Can
to?
I? It's really on my head now to what Platoon said. Have we got a point in history where we said, "Man, this movie, if only its sequel is good, then we'll be really happy with that first movie"? Does that ever actually bore out in any way?
Well, it's not a movie; it's a half a movie. Like when you look at it structurally, it doesn't function as a movie in terms of the character arcs and the dramatic arcs. It's literally just half a movie. It just ends very abruptly.
Yeah, I mean, part 1 covers the first half of the first book, and part 2 will cover the second half of the first book. I still think it's fair probably to call it a sequel in the sense that it's covering events that proceed after the events of the first one. I'm trying to think, though, to MauLer's question, has there ever been a case where that's... I can't think of one.
To give you
Maybe
an
there is.
example, chat are completely missing my point. They're like, "Oh, Infinity War and Lord of the Rings." It's like, no, Endgame was terrible, and Infinity War is still good. It was good on its own. And then Lord of the Rings, Two Towers and Return of the King, if they were bad, Fellowship would still be fucking amazing.
Yeah.
These aren't applicable. I don't know any time that we've said, "Oh man, this is going to be a solid one if the sequel nails it," and then the sequel nails it, and then we go, "Thank goodness, now the first one is solid."
It's a difficult one to pin down with Dune, and I feel like all of us are struggling a little bit to summarize our feelings about it. It's almost like it's a movie that you recognize as well made, and so you instinctively want it to be really good, and it's not quite there. It's not quite there in terms of giving you a really compelling protagonist, a really accessible story. It's like a doorway into a good story, and you just really want the second film to walk through it.
It was a warm-up for the main events.
Well,
Yeah.
there is
A very
that
good
because,
warm-up.
Yeah, the major events in the first book happen in where part 2 for June is going to be covering. That's when all of it really does happen, and the fact that it is part 1 of part 2 of the first book makes it difficult. It might be improved by the second one, I don't know, but I think a large part of that is the function of the thing that it's adapting. And Dune as a book is complicated. It's not an easy read to get into. It's not, I will always maintain, a strong character book at all. It's a very, very meta, high-level thing with a huge amount of very deep, very complex world-building, lore, and politics.
Yeah.
And that's very hard to put convincingly onto film. If anything, the first part of the Dune film is a really sparse adaptation of what's an incredibly rich book. It loses a lot of the thematic elements, and a lot of the mythology hasn't yet surfaced itself. That might come to the fore more in the second part. I don't know. But I think that's always going to be the problem with Dune. The thing that makes it unlovable is that it's adapting a story that isn't particularly lovable. It's just very, very interesting.
Is it Dune or June?
It is
Lord?
Dune.
Dune.
I need to get that in.
I feel like every time I say it, I always have to stop myself and be like, "No, don't say June."
Dune.
Chat suggestions been leaving me fucking baffled. They're like, Terminator 2, MauLer. It's like, no, Terminator 1 is amazing. What do you mean? It doesn't need Terminator 2. There's Kill Bill. It's like, again, I prefer Kill Bill 1 to 2.
Plus,
So
there was no when Terminator 1 came out, there was no indication that Terminator 2 was even going to happen. It was
Terminator
just
1
a
is complete
self-contained
on its own.
story. Yeah,
it's done so. And
Probably
then
the same with Alien as well. Nobody thought it didn't lay the groundwork for part 2 or whatever.
Certainly not necessary for they're actually good examples of a time where they didn't require a sequel, and yet they made 2 of the best sequels ever. A lot of people said Force Awakens. It's like, wait, you thought TLJ made Force Awakens worthwhile?
Maybe the Rey movie can redeem the DST.
Maybe.
Well, it is a relevant point though with TFA, because the question we've asked before is say TLJ had been incredible, fantastic movie, really made good on all the mystery boxes laid out in TFA. Would it have raised your opinion of TFA?
Here's what I think would have happened, all right? If TLJ was amazing and it gave us a fully fledged story with Snoke, Luke, and everything, and it all made sense, it was in character, and we were fucking loved it all. Let's just pretend that universe fucking happened, which is never going to happen.
Yeah.
I think at first we would have said TFA set it up and TLJ nailed the shot. And then after another few years, I think we would have been like, TFA didn't really set up TLJ. It kind of just presented things. It was like, look, here's a guy. Look, here's this thing. Who knows what this is? Like, I think we'd start arguing JJ didn't really do anything to make TLJ good in that alternate universe. And then eventually I think we would come down to where we are now in this universe of saying TFA is fucking terrible.
Okay.
Last Jedi could have been one of the greatest movies ever. People were wanting it after Force Awakens. Anyway.
I mean, you could probably say that about any film, theoretically. This could have been the greatest movie ever, but like...
Betrayal.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting to speculate, I guess, on these things, like how our opinions of movies retroactively changes depending on what comes afterwards.
Yeah. With TFA, I think the veil got lifted on it, right? And none of the things came to pass, and then people inspected it a lot harder. And because I remember when TLJ came out, if you guys remember, a lot of people were very upset because it ruined TFA. You don't really hear from people like that anymore. That just doesn't
Those people have rethought their lives.
Drinker, you should do a what if.
What if
TLJ
was fantastic?
Yeah.
Haven't you made something like that with like changing Ray's story and stuff?
I mean, that's kind of why I do the drinker fixies. So it's like, okay, how could I make this work somehow? I kind of did one on almost like the whole sequel trilogy ultimately with all these characters interweaving. But yeah, on the subject of Dune, it does feel like we're kind of primed and poised just for a sequel that's just going to somehow nail this. Yeah, it's almost like
please be good.
This will determine whether we perceive the first one as being a good film.
Yeah, there's no major problems with the first one. There's nothing you can point to in the first one and say, okay, that is a serious problem. They need to get rid of that before they move on. There's nothing like that. All the major pieces are in place. And if it does what it needs to do in the second movie, it could be brilliant.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's considered a serious problem or not, but I felt like it was lacking in likable characters. The main person I was invested in was Oscar Isaac's character, right? And spoilers, but he didn't make it for very long.
Maybe it did. I was just going to say, maybe it did what it needed to do at that stage.
I don't mind that the characters aren't likable because Platoon is right. In the book, the characters aren't likable. They're just politicians, really, and they're vying for power and they're fighting one another, and they have a very restrictive ideology that requires them to think and act and behave in a very specific way, and they're not likable. And Frank Herbert was aware of this when he was writing the books, that these characters aren't particularly likable and they're not going to be that relatable to modern readers. But that's kind of the point. That's because they exist in this very aristocratic society that makes them haughty and unapproachable. They're not supposed to be likable.
Well, it does make me wonder how people are going to take to Paul and like where his story ultimately goes, because it's not a traditional hero's journey by any stretch, and I just wonder how well people are going to process that if the movies actually stick to that and if they get us to that point.
It was a criticism I actually saw when the film came out. One of the predictable people from one of the predictable outlets accused it of being another typical white male savior trope. It's like, you've never read the books. You don't.
You
know
haven't read the books. In the second book, like there's parts where Paul Atreides brags that he has killed tens of billions of people. That he brags about the planets that he has sterilized, and I think one of his lines in it is, "I killed even more people than Emperor Hitler." Like that's the character that Herbert wrote.
Yeah, when you talk about a jihad in the Dune universe, like this is not like what we have here. Like billions of people will die, whole planets will get wiped out. That's a jihad.
Although, I don't dislike everybody in it. I just don't feel a lot for them. For example, like I like Duncan Idaho. I'm like, there he goes. Look at him. Yeah, he's cool. I actually like Baron Harkonnen as well.
He's really so well cast. He was
is it because of Is it because of the actor?
I'm going to say as well, it's the aesthetic, it's the writing for sure, but like they don't rise to a strong enough level for me. I'm like, there he goes. He's interesting, I guess. And then, like, I leave the cinema and I don't think about it really.
The biggest single problem for me with David Lynch's Dune was Baron Harkonnen. He was just awful. It was absolutely abysmal.
He was very overacting,
Awful.
I suppose, and he didn't behave like the Harkonnen from the books.
I remember Stellan Skarsgård saying that like fucking filming in that suit and doing all that shit was insane, and he did not like love it. I was just like, please don't not do part 2, please, please, please. Like,
my worry is Dave Bautista, because his character is going to become very important in book 2, or part 2 of this, and Bautista is not really an actor in the normal sense. He sort of pretends that he is,
Passable.
but like, he's better than most wrestlers turned actors, but I think he's not going to be able to carry a role like this, and I don't know why they cast him in such an important role.
What's the name? Who did Sting play? Sting played Fade Routher. Is his name? Is it Platoon?
Yeah, Fade Ralph is again important. He's not. Yeah, he's supposed to be very important again by the end, so we'll have to get a fairly rapid introduction to him. I think in part 2.
Who's playing Fade Routher?
I don't know, actually. I'm not sure. I could Google it.
I feel like I rate Dave Bautista higher than you do.
That was one of the better parts of the Lynch one. I mean, they got Sting as Fade Routher.
I think, like, if I was to rank him alongside other wrestlers turned actors, like if I was going to compare him to like Hulk Hogan or John Cena or whatever, like, okay, he's definitely better than those
Austin
guys.
Butler. They've got Austin Butler for Fade Routher. He played Elvis. He was excellent. I guess a great pick.
But yeah, like I guess when you're up against guys like Stellan Skarsgård and Timothy Chalamet and who's the guy that plays Duncan Idaho?
Jason Momoa?
No. Gurney Halleck. Apologies, Josh Brolin.
Oh, Josh
Brolin.
Like
pretty serious heavyweight actors. Like he's not really going to measure up to them. He feels a bit out of place in a film like this, I suppose.
But they're like the top of top tier. I
know, but that's what you kind of expect in a film like this, and like the character that he's playing is important, and so he needs to be played by a top tier actor. And I just feel like Bautista's not really that.
We'll find out.
All right, I guess. Yeah. Well, so this vibe.
Yeah, maybe he could deliver a lot more than I expect from him. So who knows? But
I worry about the legacy of the Dune films if we're at the point of just constantly saying like, hopefully part 2. Hopefully. I don't like them vibes.
I'm not sure, because it's going to be an interesting one. I don't think they will ever have a legacy which people look back on and say, yeah, that's one of the definitive moments in science fiction for cinema, in the way that something like Star Wars absolutely is. It's not going to redefine anything. It's not going to have a huge impact on stories that come after it. I think it will be popular enough, probably, to get an adaptation for Dune Messiah as well. So you're probably looking at maybe 3 or 4 films, at the end of which we'll look back and say, yeah, those were really pretty and kind of interesting. I liked them. They were okay. I don't think they were ever going to be something that people look back on and say, wow, that story, those characters, so very, very memorable.
Please be good.
I'm going to say, like, Andrew McCarty, right? For a $2 super chat, you really got your fucking money worth out of that one. Like, we've been talking for like 20, 30 minutes.
Well, that's going to be its own section, I assume now.
Probably,
we needed to recover from the Rings of Power conversation to talk about something we actually enjoy.
Yeah, it's like, okay, there's interesting things to speculate on here, rather like what degree of shitness do we expect from this? Yeah. And so, like, that's nice. Like, that shows at least we're in a good place with Dune.
Dune is important, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the only things I'm actually looking forward to seeing. I'm looking forward to seeing part 2. Just with those reservations. And it's kind of interesting, I think, the way that this conversation about the film kind of mirrors any conversation I've ever had about the books as well. It's that what are you talking about? You're talking about the mechanics of the thing. You're talking about how various bits and pieces may or may not add together. And the things that are getting lost are story beats, character beats, and the things that traditionally make for good, compelling drama. So it's a cerebral work, I think. And whether or not it even lands the cerebral points will be entirely determined by any payoffs that may or may not be coming in part 2.
I miss good quality sci-fi movies. We have had a real dearth of them in recent years, and I want to see them come back in some capacity. And maybe Dune is going to help to lead that charge.
That's what we were hoping the first part.
Were you disappointed with the creator?
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
I was disappointed with it.
Yeah, that was my not my hope, because I didn't go into it really expecting much, but I watched it and thought, this is cool. It's nice to see an original sci-fi property that's a bit different and it's got some new ideas. Not terribly smartly done. And ultimately it was a pretty disappointing movie, but it was nice to see that you can make good looking sci-fi films for a pretty small budget, relatively speaking. Just I would like to see more of that. Just a bit smarter, please. Better written.
Nobody thought Rebel Moon was good.
Three people, maybe 4.
Hey, that's another one. Maybe part 2 will make part 1 better. Maybe that will be the example we're looking for.
Somebody said
That's
that.
what they've all been saying.
Nobody's even got the hope for that. It's part 1 was so fucking shit. You're not going to redeem that no matter what you do.
Go to Rebel Moon.
No. Wait for the Snyder cut. Just wait for the Snyder cut. It's going to be good when it's 7 hours long.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Apparently, the full version is going to have loads of blood and boobs as well. I was like, okay, sure. I'm sure it'll be better.
I mean, those are good things, but they're not going to salvage that movie. So,
more Anthony Hopkins robot running around. Fine. I can't believe that shit, man. And
Bad.
it's such an awful start to a new sci-fi world. It's embarrassingly childish, and how it just rips off everything so shamelessly.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is it's a fetch quest to find characters who have no character because they don't ever speak again throughout the rest of the film. And these are supposed to be, ostensibly, at least the core cast of your thing going forwards. And you know nothing about them by the end of a long first part. It's just, I don't want more tits and more blood in the Snyder Cut version. I want characters to speak to each other and actually have something vaguely resembling a personality, stakes, and interest.
Could you imagine though, because this was a rejected Star Wars script, so could you imagine if they actually made a Star Wars movie that adhered to this plot, which is literally just A New Hope crossed with the Magnificent Seven?
Well, depending on where he set it, the Empire need grain, and so they go to some settlement on Tatooine and try to ask for it.
Oh God.
Fuck.
Give us your grain.
That would be so
we've mastered intergalactic space travel, but we can't figure out how to grow crops. Yeah, okay, sure. Fuck that movie. But yeah, I'm going to finish up on that note, actually, because that's a perfect way to end it. Fuck Rebel Moon.
That movie.
And we've finished up with Open Bar. Gentlemen, my panel, you've been fantastic as always. I appreciate you guys coming on tonight. And thank you for my mods. Like Mr. Brown, you will do anything to avoid mod duty, even if it includes being on the panel tonight. So
it's an absolute privilege to be here, my friend. Thank you very much.
It's been great to have you on, man. And thank you for all the excellent super chats. We will cover the ones that we've missed on the next catch-up stream. And I can't wait to get out of this fucking kilt outfit because it's really hot. I've discovered. Anyway. Thank you, and that is all we've got for today. So, go away now.
Bye.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.